Chapter 1532. Lin Sun and Ruo Wu couldn't even be considered friends, nor did they have much of a relationship. But just like Lin Sun, when she heard that Lin Sun was in trouble, she resolutely chose to rescue him. How could Lin Sun not be moved? Recuperate well. At least in this place, no one can hurt you. After a moment of silence, Lin Sun made a decision. Ruo Wu nodded and began to meditate. The injuries she suffered this time were too severe, and it was even to the extent of injuring her foundation of the Great Tao. It was still unknown whether she could completely recover now, but she did not regret it. From Ruo Wu's point of view, Lin Sun couldn't be absent from the ancient Desolation Realm in the battle of the 9-region battlefield. No one knew better than her how terrible Lin Sun's power would be as long as he could become a saint. During the 10 years in the Absolute Domain, even someone as dazzling as Xiao Hao couldn't outshine Lin Sun. Before entering the 9-territory battlefield, Lin Sun had defeated a group of foreign messengers alone, which had pushed him to the throne of the top cultivator in the ancient Desolation Realm. At that time, both Xiao Hao and Ruo Wu couldn't help but sigh in admiration. Later, as Prince Xiao Hao and she reached the peak of the Saint Realm one after another, they barely walked out of the shadow of being dominated by Lin Sun. In their pursuit of the Tao, they were one step ahead of Lin Sun, winning the admiration of countless people in the ancient Desolation Realm. However, Ruo Wu was very clear that Lin Sun might not be able to reach the pinnacle of the Saint Realm first. But as long as he did, even she and Prince Xiao Hao would not be able to compete with him. This was why when she found out that Lin Sun was trapped in the godly refining forest, she exposed herself and used herself as bait to lure out the saints of the Blood Demon territory. The purpose was to share the danger for Lin Sun. In fact, Ruo Wu's action did help Lin Sun out of trouble. For example, Lei Shueshio had originally planned to enter the god refining forest to pick up Lei Mujin. However, halfway through the journey, he heard that Ruo Wu had appeared in the Icewind Valley. He had no choice but to change his mind and leave halfway. Invisibly, Lin Sun also avoided the possibility of being attacked by a peerless saint. Fortunately, he's safe and sound. Ruo Wu completely relaxed and abandoned all distracting thoughts, falling into a deep level of meditation. Her jade white and crystalline body was tainted with blood and covered in injuries. Her fiery red robe was in tatters, and her peerlessly beautiful face was ghastly pale and translucent, causing her to seem extremely haggard and miserable. Seeing this, Lin Sun felt more and more emotional. If not for saving him, with her current strength, how could she have been chased by 7 peak-level sages? Master, it's very likely that she has already damaged her own Tao foundation. Little Silver was deeply worried. Lin Sun took a deep breath and said, "Don't worry. I'll do whatever I can to help her recover completely." In the following days, Ruo Wu stayed in the secret realm of the underground palace. The changes in the outside world didn't affect Lin Sun and others at all. In the pond filled with chaotic energy, the demonic crack butterfly was absorbing the power of the void saint beast. Its slender and gorgeous body shone with a holy luster. Little Silver was also cultivating with all his might. He realized that perhaps the secret realm was extremely safe, but once he left, he was bound to face an unimaginably terrifying calamity. Because 7 peak-level sages, including Lei Shueshio, had sealed off the area around the abyss. Lin Sun was comprehending the mystery of becoming a sage in the sage introduction. Every peak-level sage would trigger different tribulations when he became a sage. This was related to the different paths they sought towards the Tao. But Lin Sun found one thing in common. In primitive times, every peak-level sage would make a great wish to become a sage. For example, the Golden Cicada young man made a great wish that all living beings in the world could become sages one day. For example, the Taishian Sword Emperor made a great wish for the world to be peaceful. For example, the Weiyang War Emperor made a great wish to stop war by killing. These great wishes were naturally contained in Great Spirit. However, in Lin Sun's view, No matter what great wish to become a sage, it was just a goal on the road to pursue. This goal differed from person to person. There was no difference between high and low goals, and it wasn't that the more shocking one's ambition was, the better it would be. The key was whether such a great wish came from one's own heart. If it went against one's own heart, the great wish would be an illusion. Even if one became a sage, it would conflict with one's own state of mind in the future, and he wouldn't be able to make great achievements. On the contrary, if the great wish came from one's own heart, even if it seemed small, as long as one became a sage, one's cultivation would be smooth. For example, there was an emperor-level existence named Long How recorded in the introduction to the saint. When he became a saint, his ambition was, when I become a sage, I only hope that I will never die, and that I will bless my clan so that everyone can live in peace. Such an emperor's great wish was just to protect his clan so that they could live in peace. It might be ridiculed if it was set out, but such a great wish accompanied Long How to become a sage until he forged the road of great emperor. When I become a sage, Lin Sun murmured for a long time. His eyes were deep and thoughtful, and he stood there in a daze. When he was young, he only wanted to know his life experience. Until he learned about it, he only wanted to know where his parents were now and who had persecuted them. And Master Lu, where was he now? Similarly, he still had a lot of things to do. It was as if he had pushed open the door to heaven, like finding out the culprit behind the scenes who controlled Yun Qingbai, Quasi-Emperor Ba Qi. But all this seemed to be related to him, but the vision that really came from his heart, what was it? Yun Qingbai said that he had no choice from the beginning. Now that I think about it, isn't it the same for me? Lin Sun was in a daze for a long time, and couldn't help sighing in his heart. From the beginning, he had been carrying a lot of things, such as family hatred, the mystery of his life experience. Many fetters and karma urged him to work hard and didn't dare to slack off. Now that he thought about it, Lin Sun found that what he really wanted to do seemed to have nothing to do with these things. So what on earth did he want? Lin Sun was lost in thought. As time went by, Lin Sun was silent and motionless, like a clay sculpture, sitting there with his legs crossed and no longer moving. 2 days later, Little Silver noticed that there seemed to be something wrong with Lin Sun. It was clear that he was not meditating, and his aura was as still as a stone. Don't disturb him. Suddenly, Ruo Wu, who was not far away, opened her eyes, and there was a strange splendor in the depths of her pupils. She said, "He is thinking about a problem that is related to his future path and destiny." Little Silver was moved. Is it related to the great wish of the saint? Ruo Wu nodded. The great wish of the saint is mysterious. Maybe it can't determine the strength of a practitioner, but it will affect his future path. It seems that Master is not far from breaking through the realm. Little Silver's eyes were bright. Ruo Wu smiled and said, "Earlier, I intended to risk my life to bring him to the absolute purgatory secret realm to fight for a fortuitous encounter at the peak of becoming a saint. But now, it would seem that the path he seeks is unrelated to these fortuitous encounters." Little Silver said proudly, "My master's path has always been different from others, different from the world, different from the past and the present." Ruo Wu was stunned. She looked at Lin Sun, who was as still as a mountain not far away, and said thoughtfully, "Perhaps this is the reason why he could be unrivaled in the ancient desolation realm. By the way, do you know that there are many opportunities in this secret realm?" Immediately, Ruo Wu changed the topic and asked Little Silver, "There are indeed." Speaking of this, Little Silver seemed to realize something and said, "You also got one?" Ruo Wu nodded with a smile, her starry eyes sparkling. "I was seriously injured before, and the foundation of the Saint Tao was damaged. But in the previous practice, I experienced an incredible ordeal, and my Taoist injury was restored to its original state. Which building is the test?" Little Silver's eyes lit up. "Jin Yuan Building." Ruo Wu pointed to a building in the distance and said with a touch of amazement, "This secret realm is not simple. If your master can figure out his great wish of the saint this time, he is very likely to break through the realm here." Little Silver grinned and said, "Of course." Anyway, as long as it was a praise for Lin, Little Silver liked to listen to it. Ruo Wu couldn't help laughing. Even she was a little jealous of Lin's son, who could make a spirit-eating insect king trust and follow him unconditionally. Bang! 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 At this moment, a dull breaking sound suddenly sounded outside the secret realm of the underground palace. Little Silver narrowed his eyes and gnashed his teeth. It must be those bastards from the blood demon ancient region. Don't disturb him. I'll go with you to have a look. Ruo Wu stood up. Her injuries had been completely healed. At this time, her skin was crystal clear, filled with the glory of the Saint Tao. Her slender and graceful figure was glittering, and she had a kind of spirit of looking up to the world and looking down on the world. This was the charm of a peerless saint. Even an ordinary true saint had to bow his head. Okay, Little Silver took Ruo Wu with him and left the underground palace. They looked up and saw corpses being thrown down one after another over the abyss. There were men and women, peerless figures, and ordinary kings on the path to immortality. But without exception, all of them were tortured to death before they were tossed into the abyss. Some had their limbs severed, some had their stomachs cut open, some had their heads twisted off, and some had transformed into a pile of flesh that trickled down to the ground. It was impossible to even identify them. After these corpses fell, they were swallowed up by the dense space cracks above the underground palace. Even if they died, not even their corpses were left behind. Little Silver's eyes suddenly turned blood red, and he gritted his teeth and said, "Those damned alien scums." Ruo Wu stood still, her expression extremely cold. They were meat on the chopping block, which made her feel depressed. "This time, I'll send 10 two-legged goats to meet you. If you still don't come out in 3 days, I'll send you another 100 two-legged goats." In the sky above the abyss, Lei Shui's indifferent and cold voice resounded. "As long as you don't come out, all the two-legged goats caught by the blood demon ancient region will all die because of you. Remember, these two-legged goats died because of you." Chapter 1533. Silver clenched his teeth in anger. "Fairy Ruo Wu, I'll go get little T on. How about we work together to kill those bastards?" Ruo Wu shook her head. "Let's wait for Lin Sun to make the decision. I suspect that a trap has been set up around the abyss. We can't act rashly." Silver frowned, but in the end he sighed, "Fine, we'll have to endure it." In reality, he didn't know that Ruo Wu's murderous intent was almost out of control. In the end, the two suppressed their anger and returned to the secret underground realm. Outside the abyss, Lei Shuixiu said indifferently, "Since Xue Qingyi told us to kill the adulterous couple no matter what, then we can only wait here for the time being." The other 6 saints had no objections. But what if they hide inside and refuse to come out? Someone asked. "Then we'll use the bodies of the two-legged lambs to fill up the abyss." Lei Shuixiu said indifferently, "I don't believe they won't do anything." Then he ordered, "Pass down my order. In the future, all the two-legged lambs we catch in the blood demon territory are to be sent here." Yes, a black-striped demon hornet tribe powerhouse accepted the order and left. Also, we need to make some preparations. For example, we need to set up a large array here in case anything happens. Lei Shuixiu said in a low voice. "Also, tell the powerhouses to lock down the godly training forest to prevent powerful people from the ancient desolation region from coming to the rescue." Everyone nodded and started to move. Xue Qingyi had already given the order. This time, they had to kill the man and woman no matter what. Therefore, no one dared to be negligent. Perhaps Xue Qingyi wasn't a saint yet, but in the blood demon territory, he was the leader and had the absolute right to speak. "I have a feeling that if we can kill the adulterous couple, we'll definitely deal a heavy blow to the ancient desolation region." Lei Shuixiu's eyes were full of murderous intent. The others agreed with him. The ancient desolation region had been in decline for too long. Only a small group of the younger generation had reached the peak. Peerless figures like Lin Sun and Ruo Wu were definitely leaders of the ancient desolation region. If they died, the ancient desolation region's powerhouses would be leaderless. In the boundless wilderness, a group of experts from the ancient desolation realm were fleeing in panic. Behind them, a group of flying kite demon races experts chased after them leisurely, and a cruel smile hung on their lips. After a while, when the battle broke out, the experts of the ancient desolation realm were attacked from all sides. 7 of them died on the spot, and 13 were captured alive. "Leave this girl here first. I need to vent my anger first." One of the flying kite races experts looked at a beautiful woman with a lustful gaze as he strode over to her. Not long after, screams of anger and pain rang out in the wilderness. The woman was struggling on her deathbed. The flying iris devils roared with laughter. Boom! A fierce battle broke out above a lake. Soon, a saint from the ancient desolation realm was pulled out from the bottom of the lake and fell to the ground like a dead dog. "Not bad. We finally caught a big fish." The sages of the blood-fiend ancient region all wore satisfied smiles. "Capture this big fish and send it to the god training forest," one of the sages ordered. Someone immediately stepped forward and chained the head of the saint from the ancient desolation realm. He dragged the saint's head on the ground like a dog and ran away. "We can't let the dead go to waste. Collect their skulls. Our city of Tao protectors will expand in the future, and these skulls will be the best material to build the city walls." On a blood-colored wasteland, a tall and skinny man stood in the middle of a battlefield littered with corpses and said calmly. A group of experts immediately began to harvest the heads of the corpses on the ground, as if they were collecting the flesh of livestock. They were skilled, and it was obvious that this wasn't the first time they had done this. Similar scenes were happening in different areas of the Bloodfiend realm. Following Xue Qingyi's order, the experts of the entire Bloodfiend ancient region began to cooperate with Lei Xue and the others to capture the experts of the ancient desolation realm. Resistance was futile. Bloody, brutal, and horrifying scenes were playing out ceaselessly. Sin and evil intertwined. In just 3 days, hundreds of captured experts of the ancient desolation realm were sent to the abyss in the depths of the god training forest. There were even a few sages among them. In the ancient desolation realm, these sages were all-powerful and influential figures. They were respected by countless experts. But now, all of them were in dire straits and covered in wounds. They were extremely miserable and had become prisoners. Lei Xue's expression was cold. Without even looking, he raised his hand and grabbed. Bang, bang, bang. With a series of terrifying explosions, 100 experts of the ancient desolation realm were killed on the spot. Their flesh and blood were all swept up and tossed into the abyss. From afar, it looked like a rain of flesh and blood had fallen on the abyss. The smell of blood was overwhelming and nauseating. The other captured experts of the ancient desolation realm trembled in fear. Many of them collapsed to the ground. Some cursed, some roared angrily, and some begged for mercy. Not everyone had the courage to die, and not everyone was unyielding. It was inevitable that they would beg for mercy from the experts of the alien clans. But all of this was destined to be in vain. Lei Xue and the other 6 peerless sages were indifferent from the beginning to the end. For them, the experts of the ancient desolation realm were indeed no different from livestock. Otherwise, why would they be called 2-legged sheep? In the end, Lei Xue said, "This is the flesh and blood of 100 2-legged sheep. If you can bear it, more 2-legged sheep will die because of you next time." His cold voice resounded in the sky and the earth. It was transmitted into the abyss. Here they come again. Little Silver's face was full of killing intent. He couldn't hold it in anymore. If you rush out, you'll be tricked by them. Ruo Wu took a deep breath and suppressed her anger. Remember, don't do anything before Lin Sun wakes up. Then, she sat cross-legged on the ground, abandoned her perception, and began to meditate. She was afraid that if she continued to listen, she would be the first to attack. Little Silver's face was livid, and his expression kept changing. But in the end, he held it in and punched the ground hard. Gritting his teeth, he said, "I'll pay them back 1,000 times." In the distance, Lin Sun was motionless and silent. These days, he had been in this state like a rock. Time flew by. Unknowingly, a month had passed. During this period of time, more and more experts of the ancient desolation realm were brutally killed. Their corpses and flesh were thrown into the abyss. Lei Shui wanted to force Lin Sun and Ruo Wu out in this bloody and cruel way. But until now, his wish hadn't been fulfilled. There were more than 1,000 bodies thrown into the abyss. Among them, there were descendants of major sects in the ancient desolation realm, elites who were regarded as dragons and phoenixes, and beautiful girls. There were also all-powerful sages. But no matter who they were no different from livestock. After being slaughtered, their bodies were thrown into the abyss. Over the past month, the surroundings of the abyss have been filled with a lingering smell of blood, causing the void to be dyed a blood-red color. If retribution really existed in this world, Lei Shui and the others would have been killed long ago. Unfortunately, retribution was just the imagination of the weak. In the 9-territory battlefield, millions of corpses were buried every time the 9-territory battle took place. Blood flowed like a river. For Lei Shui and the others, those who died were all experts of the ancient desolation realm. Naturally, they wouldn't feel anything. I'm sure that Ruo Wu must have hurt her Tao Foundation. She's nothing to worry about. A man in cyan said with a gloomy expression. Only Lin Sun is unfathomable. He hasn't become a sage yet, but he already has the ability to kill sages. What if he becomes a sage? Hee, you don't think that kid can become a sage in the abyss, do you? Lei Shui sneered. That's impossible. Even with Shui Qingyi's background, she can only go to the ultimate prison secret realm to seek the opportunity to become a sage. That kid is trapped here and is destined to miss the opportunity to enter the ultimate prison secret realm. In this way, he has no chance to become a sage. At the end, Lei Shui couldn't help but sneer. It seems like we can't do anything about that kid hiding in the abyss. But at the same time, he'll lose the opportunity to become a sage. That's enough. The other peerless saints pondered for a moment and agreed with him. Even if they couldn't kill that kid for now, it was still worthwhile to trap him here and make him miss the opportunity to become a sage. One must know that that kid was a leading figure. How terrifying would he be if he became a sage? But now it was destined to be impossible. Time passed quickly. Another half a month passed. Blood Demon Realm, City of Tao Protectors. Boom! A dazzling ray of light shot out from Shui Qingyi's seclusion area, dispersing the clouds in the sky and illuminating the area. On this day, Shui Qingyi came out of seclusion and issued an order to lead a group of peerless figures of the Blood Demon Ancient Realm to the Ancient Desolation Realm. Because the ultimate prison secret realm would descend in half a month. As soon as the news spread, the City of Tao Protectors was in an uproar. The peerless figures of the various clans and races who were already prepared obeyed the order and gathered towards Shui Qingyi. These peerless figures had been lying dormant in the City of Tao Protectors for the opportunity to enter the ultimate prison secret realm. Now, they were about to set out. However, before they set out, Shui Qingyi received a piece of news that caused him to frown and reveal a wisp of displeasure. All the peerless sages have been unable to kill that man and woman? What a bunch of useless fools. His voice was indifferent, and he didn't conceal his displeasure at all. Pass down my order. If Lei Shui and the others haven't killed that man and woman by the time I return from the ultimate prison secret realm, then don't blame me for being impolite. With that, Shui Qingyi led the group and left. All along the way, a group of peerless sages followed them and protected the peerless figures of the Blood Demon Ancient Realm. Chapter 1534. The Secret Realm of the Underground Palace. It's been almost 2 months. Master is only thinking about a problem related to the great ambition of the divine path. Why hasn't he woken up yet? Little Silver frowned, a little worried. Fairy Ruo Wu was surprised as well. She thought for a while and said, "Don't worry. I believe with his intelligence, he would not be troubled by a single question." Whoosh! In the distance, the demonic crack butterfly fluttered over. Little Tian, you transformed again? Little Silver's eyes lit up. At this moment, The demonic cracked butterfly's wings looked as if they were made of pure black jade, and there was a mysterious Tao light flowing on them. Its body was slender, and when it spread its wings, it was only the size of a palm. However, as it flapped its wings, the nearby void was stirred up like ripples. Rual, Wu said in surprise, perfected longevity ninth retribution realm, just one step away from stepping into the peerless saint realm. What an amazing advancement speed. When she first saw the sky-split demonic butterfly, it had only just stepped into the longevity tribulation realm. However, in just 2 months, it had already reached the perfected longevity ninth tribulation realm. Such a speed of advancement could absolutely be said to be world-shocking and world-shattering. And it was even to the extent that no one would believe it if news of it were to spread. Before I went into hibernation, I already had the foundation to become a saint. Now, I'm just awakening my foundation. Little Tion folded his wings and landed lightly on Little Silver's shoulder. Furthermore, I've also absorbed the power of a quasi-emperor void sacred beast skeleton. It's only natural that I've advanced to this level. Little Silver and Rual Wu were speechless. How could this be considered normal? At that moment, whether it was Little Silver, Rual Wu, or Little Tion, they were all startled and looked into the distance. There, Lin Sun, who had been like a clay statue, opened his eyes, and his whole body emitted a kind of obscure and mysterious wave. He stood up, placed his hands behind his back, and stared blankly into the sky. He seemed to be pondering an extremely difficult problem, and it seemed extremely unusual. Master, Little Silver was about to speak when Rual Wu stopped him. An illusory luster appeared in her starry eyes. She stared at Lin Sun and transmitted her voice. Your master may want to prove his Tao. Proving the way. It was just 2 words, but Little Silver's heart shook fiercely. Let's avoid this place first. As Rual Wu said this, she quietly moved away with Little Silver and Little Tion, then sent a telepathic message. The obscure energy waves from his body are the signs of the extreme transformation of his power. If I'm not mistaken, it's very likely that his divine tribulation is coming. As soon as the voice fell, Lin Sun's startled expression in the distance was replaced by a touch of extreme calmness. Then a Tao sound came from his lips. When I become a saint, boom. As soon as he said this, an indescribably terrifying murderous force descended upon him. All the hair on Little Silver's body stood on end, and his body stiffened. He felt like his soul was about to leave his body, and he almost fell to his knees in terror. The little heavenly wings fiercely unfurled, but then immediately retracted. His entire body was trembling, as if he was also intimidated and on the verge of collapsing. Even Rual Wu, who had stepped into the peerless saint stage, narrowed her eyes as she felt extreme danger approaching. Without hesitation, she took Little Silver and Little Tion far away again. What tribulation is this? Little Silver was shocked. It was invisible, intangible, colorless, and traceless. It couldn't be seen, touched, or sensed at all, but he could clearly feel the existence of this tribulation. It is indeed very rare. No, even I have never heard of such a strange and inconceivable tribulation befalling someone when they are at the peak of becoming a saint. Rual Wu's pretty face was full of solemnity. As far as she knew, every tribulation would cause a sky full of tribulation clouds, and then the tribulation thunder would rise, and the tribulation would come down. For example, when she was crossing the tribulation to become a saint, she triggered the 9 heavenly thunder tribulation, which was divided into 6 minor and 3 major tribulations, a total of 9 tribulations. Each tribulation thunder had the power to destroy the world, and the thunder tribulation was more terrible than the previous one. In order to pass the tribulation, she prepared many life-saving means, such as peerless elixirs, magic weapons, and so on, and even invited many old antiques to protect her. Even so, she still encountered great danger during the tribulation, which could be said to be a narrow escape from death. When she succeeded in crossing the tribulation, she almost died. As far as Rual Wu knew, Prince Xiaohao was about the same when he crossed the tribulation to become a saint, but the tribulation he faced was different. But it was obvious that the tribulation Lin Sun encountered was different from theirs. There was no tribulation cloud, no tribulation thunder, and no earth-shattering destructive momentum. It came so silently and invisibly, and this was only because he had said the words, "When I become a saint." What on earth is the great wish he has been thinking about these days? How could it trigger such a strange and terrible tribulation? Rual Wu was nervous. Puff! As soon as Lin Sun finished his words, dense scars appeared on his body as if it was cut by a sharp blade, and blood flowed like a waterfall. In the blink of an eye, he became a bloody man. "Master!" Little Silver exclaimed, and was about to rush over to help Lin Sun. Rual Wu immediately stopped him with a solemn and stern look. "If you go now, you will destroy his tribulation." Little Silver's expression was uncertain, and he was burning with anxiety. In the distance, Lin Sun didn't even frown. His face was extremely calm from beginning to end. He was bathed in blood and had countless scars, but he didn't notice it at all. He said again, "My heart is the heart of heaven." Boom! Rual Wu, Little Silver, and Little Tian didn't hear clearly at all. They felt their souls throbbing as if they were struck by lightning. Their blood and chi were rolling, and they almost coughed up blood. This made them change their faces in horror. Lin Sun's body was eroded by the strong wind and smelted by the raging fire. The wind was the tribulation wind, invisible and intangible, but it could blow through people's soul, mind, and will. The fire was the tribulation fire, invisible and intangible, but could melt people's flesh, skin, and internal organs. In the blink of an eye, Lin Sun's body was like a piece of scorched wood, tottering. "Master!" Little Silver's eyes were red, and his eyes were about to burst. Rual Wu held him down and said, "This is his tribulation. No one can get involved in it. Don't you understand? My Tao is the great way." Even so, Lin Sun's voice sounded again. Boom! Little Silver and the others only felt their ears buzzing, and their six senses were blocked. Their faces turned pale, and they were shaken away by an invisible and terrible force. Even Rual Wu was no exception. They fell to the ground, coughing up blood, and their faces changed. What kind of tribulation was this? How could it be so horrible? They didn't get involved in it, but just watched it from a distance, and they couldn't bear it. It could be imagined how terrible the blow Lin Sun suffered when he encountered such a tribulation was. In fact, Lin Sun's scorched body, which was like a dead wood, directly cracked and exploded. Only the light of his soul was flowing with the breath of immortality. But it wasn't over yet. The next moment, Lin Sun's firm, calm, and even emotionless voice rang out again. "When my Tao is proved with eternity as my crown, I am crowned as the head. I wear my body with immortality. With fortune as my boots, I will walk on my feet." However, no matter how hard they tried, Little Silver and Rual Wu couldn't hear Lin Sun's figure. They could only feel that every time Lin Sun uttered a word, the terrible killing in the void became stronger. In the end, even the sound and perception disappeared. The light of Lin Sun's soul, like a light in a storm, gradually weakened and dimmed outside the Nine Regions battlefield, in a vast, empty void. While Lin Sun was going through the tribulation, countless power of rules of order suddenly emerged and turned into terrible waves, rolling violently in the boundless void. "What?" A surprised and clear voice sounded in the depths of the void. "This Tao wants to replace the heaven." "Who is it? Isn't he afraid of being killed by the taboo?" Nine Regions battlefield. It seems that when a junior in the Nine Regions became a sage, the power he sought was too taboo, so he suffered a disaster. Another old voice rang out leisurely. As soon as the voice fell, a powerful, overbearing, and cold voice suddenly exploded in the void. "Humph! In the Nine Regions battlefield, if it weren't for the rules, I would kill this rebellious heresy first." "Heresy? Didn't we prove our Tao in this way?" "Why? Only you are allowed to prove your Tao in this way, but others are not allowed to set foot on this road." Someone sneered. You're all ancestors of the Tao. Why argue about this? If this person doesn't die, he is destined to set foot on the ancient road of the starry sky one day. At that time, it won't be too late to talk about his life or death. An ethereal and low voice resounded through the air. Suddenly, all the voices disappeared. The tumbling and turbulent void also calmed down, and all the power of rules of order disappeared. After a long time, Little Silver, Ruawu, and Little Tion gradually regained their senses, and their vision became clear. The unimaginably terrible breath of the tribulation was long gone. Looking around, whether it was the pavilions, terraces, or other scenery, nothing had suffered any damage. If they hadn't been sure that everything just now was real, they would have suspected that it was just a dream. "Where's the master?" Suddenly, Little Silver widened his eyes and shouted. He looked around, but couldn't find any trace of Lin's son. Ruawu's face also changed. Even with the power of her divine senses, she couldn't sense Lin Sun's breath or trace anymore. The demonic butterfly flew lightly and moved to different areas of the secret realm in the underground palace. After searching for a long time, it still found nothing. Did the master die in a disaster? Little Silver felt like collapsing at this moment. He was panic-stricken, his chest was stuffy, and his mind was blank. The demonic butterfly fell silent. Ruawu's face also turned slightly pale. If Lin Sun died here, the experts of the ancient desolation realm would lose a pillar without him. How could they compete with the top experts of the other 8 realms? "Master!" Little Silver screamed and collapsed to the ground. Suddenly, he felt as if he had lost all his strength, fighting spirit, and thoughts. As long as the spirit-eating insects recognized their master, they would follow him to death. Now that Lin Sun was gone, Little Silver only had one thought: to go with his master. "Stop screaming. I'm going deaf." At this moment, a gentle voice with a smile rang in Little Silver's ears. "Some more updates. Also, Goldfish promised to update 10 times this Saturday. To be honest, it's very stressful, but Goldfish will keep her promise and try her best." Chapter 1535. Along with the voice, a wisp of holy light emerged in the void, and then gradually outlined a slender and handsome figure. His black hair was loose, and there was a smile at the corner of his mouth. His whole body was flowing with bright light rain, and his clothes were fluttering. He was like an exiled immortal, giving people a feeling of emptiness and perfection. Standing there casually, he had the momentum of connecting heaven and earth and looking up to all living beings. Little Silver was stunned at first, and then he turned his head. When he saw the familiar figure in his field of vision, his originally blank and gray consciousness gradually recovered. He got up quickly, his eyes red, and said excitedly, "Master, it's really you." Saying this, he still didn't believe it. He jumped to Lin Sun's shoulder and pulled Lin Sun's earlobe. Only then did he find that it was true. He immediately smiled and danced with excitement. "Haha, Master is still alive. That damn tribulation can't do anything to my master." Seeing his ecstasy, Lin Sun couldn't help laughing. Next to him, Ruawu was also in a trance. After a while, she calmed down and said, "You have set foot on the Supreme Saint Realm?" Lin Sun nodded. "I was lucky to succeed." Even though Ruawu had already guessed it, when he got the confirmation, his heart still rolled and his eyes were in a trance. He succeeded. Lin Sun didn't participate in the struggle in the secret realm of absolute prison, nor did he rely on any external force. In a strange and horrible tribulation, Lin Sun broke through it and became a saint. No wonder I was unable to lock onto your aura earlier. So it turns out that you've already transcended the path to longevity and stepped foot into the absolute saint realm. Moreover, if I'm not wrong, the absolute saint realm you've attained is extremely extraordinary. Ruawu took a deep breath to suppress the inner shock. Lin Sun thought for a moment and said, "I haven't had time to carefully understand the feeling. Let me stabilize my realm first." With that, Lin Sun sat cross-legged on the ground. Buzz! When he was meditating, a circle of light suddenly appeared behind his head. It was as brilliant as the sun, surrounded by divine rainbows and flying lights like rain. Vaguely, various visions were reflected in the light wheel. There was a big abyss swallowing the sky, a real dragon roaring, water and fire flowing, a cycle of Tai Chi, and an immortal aura diffusing. There were even waves of heavenly sounds of the great Tao faintly spreading out. From afar, he was like a god. His entire body emitted a vast and divine aura, and he had a dignified aura that looked down upon all living beings. Just based on the aura of the divine Tao, I'm inferior to him. Raw, Wu exclaimed inwardly. Little Silver clenched his fists in excitement. After Master stabilizes his realm, it's time to punish those old bastards. During these days, countless experts of the ancient Desolation realm had been brutally murdered, and their corpses had been thrown into the abyss. Furthermore, that blood elementalist often made undisguised threats. Little Silver had already been suppressing a bellyful of hatred and anger. I only want Master to bring me to find an opportunity to become a saint. That way, Master will not have to fight alone against a saint. The demonic sky-splitter butterfly said softly. Little Silver grinned and said, I think so too. But before that, we have to vent our anger and kill all those alien scums. Rumble. The surging spiritual energy within Lin Sun's body had completely transformed into golden and extremely pure saint force. The word Yuan meant the beginning. For example, New Year's Day represented the first day of a year. For example, first year represented the first year of a certain era. For example, Zhuang Yuan represented the first person of a certain achievement. Elemental energy represented the origin of the birth of spiritual power. Such power could only be controlled by those who had become saints. A casual strike from such a force could shatter mountains and crush experts below the saint stage. It was truly, peerlessly formidable. At this time, the surging divine Tao spiritual energy in Lin Sun's body was as bright as the sun, vast and boundless. Just the aura it emitted was enough to make ordinary true sages tremble in fear. In Lin Sun's dantian, the embryonic form of a world was condensed. It was like a breathing, chaotic whole, constantly absorbing and refining the saint force around him. This was the unique, chaotic whole world of a true saint, which gathered all the cultivation and origin of a true saint. There was a thumb-sized mountain within Lin Sun's chaotic whole world. It was golden and glowed, and it seemed tiny, yet it emanated a boundlessly tall, lofty, and powerful aura. This was the foundation of the Saint Tao, and it was also taken to be the quintessence Tao mountain. It was branded with the profundities of various grand Taos, and it gathered the essence, energy, and spirit of a cultivator. The more robust the quintessence Tao mountain was, the more stable the cultivator's foundation was. One day, when the quintessence Tao mountain rose from the ground and became the pillar that held up the chaotic whole world, it would be equivalent to stepping into the Saint King realm and standing at the peak of the Saint Tao. Presently, even though Lin Sun's quintessence Tao mountain was only the size of a thumb, it already possessed a towering and boundless aura. The grand Taos branded on it and the essence, energy, and spirit it contained were peerlessly powerful, and it caused the entire quintessence Tao mountain to glow and rain down a rain of light. Simply speaking, the true saint realm possessed saint force, the chaotic whole world, and the quintessence Tao mountain. These were the unique symbols of this realm. Besides that, Lin Sun's soul had undergone a transformation as well. In the past, his soul had been divided into three, and they were in charge of the past, present, and future. Yet now, the three souls had fused into one, and they were like three flowers converging above one's head that resided within his sea of consciousness and emanated boundless light. When one looked carefully, Lin Sun's soul was simply like a god. It was dignified, flowed with the glow of the Tao, and revealed an eternal aura. On his path to longevity, Lin Sun had cultivated chi refinement, soul refinement, and body refinement simultaneously, and he'd stepped into the peak of all three paths. Now, the benefits were finally revealed. It wasn't exaggerated to say that merely the strength of his soul was sufficient to make a peak saint feel oppressed and terrified. Such a soul was taken to be the saintly soul Dharma idol. Similarly, Lin Sun had stepped into the peak of the saint realm in body refinement. This was a true attainment of the body refinement realm. It was just like the Buddhist sect's indestructible Buddha golden body, the Taoist sect's glazed Taoist true body, and the devil sect's indestructible fiend body. Every inch of skin membrane, every inch of tendons and bones, and every acupoint of his body showed an indestructible aura. Lin Sun's current body could be called the nine pure holy body, but it was different from the nine pure holy body recorded in the inheritance of the nine pure holy body technique. It had a kind of domineering momentum that could suppress all the heavens. This was a kind of physique momentum tempered by the experience of divine elephant martial emperor, and it perfectly fit with the nine pure holy body. However, after experiencing the tempering of the extreme Tao building, Lin Sun realized the existence of the Tao body. That was to completely refine the power of the Tao around his body into his body, so that he could carry the charm of the Tao in his every move. Now, Lin Sun had forged the peak holy body, and sooner or later he would forge his body into the real Tao body. Chi refinement, and soul refinement. The transformation and benefits brought to Lin Sun by the three supreme paths after he became a saint at the peak could be described as immeasurable. But all of this was not a fluke. In order to balance the cultivation of these three paths, Lin Sun took great risks and experienced terrible tribulations, which could not be understood by other practitioners at all. Only in order to cross the Forbidden Tao test, Lin Sun paid a lot of effort. Now it was just the time to reap the harvest. Lin Sun meditated in silence and tried his best to perceive the new changes in his body. His heart was calm and free, without joy or sorrow. To him, it was only natural for him to become a saint after all. Otherwise, why did he bother to travel from the ancient desolation territory to the mortal world, from a mortal world to the bloodthirsty battlefield, and finally to the nine-region battlefield? Everything was for the sake of becoming a saint today. Now, this wish was finally achieved, and his efforts were not in vain. A few days later, Lin Sun woke up from meditation. "Master, do you want to go out to kill the enemy now?" Little Silver, who had been waiting for a long time, couldn't wait to ask. Lin Sun stood up and said, "Don't worry, I still need to familiarize myself with the fighting style of the saint." As he spoke, he looked at Ruo Wu not far away. Ruo Wu, dressed in a red dress, had a beautiful face, and her starry eyes were illusory. She said with a smile, "I also want to know how powerful you are." Obviously, she had already guessed that Lin Sun would definitely regard her as an opponent and fight with her. "Please." Lin Sun smiled and raised his hand. Whoosh! Ruo Wu disappeared out of thin air, and the next moment she appeared in front of Lin Sun. Her white palm pressed out, and the power of the saint burst out like a landslide and a tsunami. With a dull sound, Lin Sun was directly shaken out. Although he was unscathed, he looked a little embarrassed. He touched his nose and said with a smile, again. The brand new transformation of his power made him feel as if he had suddenly transformed from an ant into a giant dragon, and he was still unable to precisely control the power that he possessed. "Then I have to seize this opportunity to teach you a good lesson. Otherwise, there will be no such precious opportunity in the future." Ruo Wu smiled brightly and launched an attack. Boom! She moved like lightning and showed no mercy, displaying the power that belonged to a peerless saint. Of course, she still held back. Otherwise, the secret realm of the underground palace would have suffered great damage. While fighting with each other, she also gave Lin Sun some new fighting tips. For example, how to fight with space transmission. This was the most critical point. It should be known that as long as one became a saint, he could master the method of space transmission, which involved the use of space power. This was a completely strange field for Lin Sun. As for the wings of Burning God, it was a treasure after all. not the power of space transmission. Bang! Before long, Lin Sun was repelled again and staggered. However, his eyes became brighter and firmer, and his fighting spirit was surging. He said, again. In the distance, Little Silver also waved his fist and cheered. Master, as a man who has become a saint, you must not be defeated by any woman who dares to fight with you. Otherwise, how can you raise your head in the future? This made Ruo Wu couldn't help rolling her eyes and scolding with a smile. A henchman who wants to see the world in chaos. There will be 10 chapters on Saturday, so I must save them. But what should I do if Goldfish wants to add more chapters tonight? What a headache. Let's see how everyone votes. Chapter 1536. A quarter of an hour later, Lin Sun, who was beaten to a pulp, finally had the power to fight back. Although he was still suppressed, he could barely fight back. Half an hour later, Lin Sun and Ruo Wu were neck and neck in the fight. Little Silver grinned cheerfully. Ruo Wu couldn't laugh anymore. Her eyebrows were full of concentration. Although she had long known that when Lin Sun adapted and mastered the power of becoming a saint, she was still unwilling to give up. But she was still a little unwilling in her heart. She wanted to try how long she could suppress Lin Sun with the power of a peerless saint. She was a peerless figure of vermilion bird. She was noble and unyielding. How could she think that she was inferior to others? However, in less than an hour, she was completely unable to suppress Lin Sun. On the contrary, Lin Sun's counterattack doubled the pressure on her. I don't believe it. Ruo Wu gritted her teeth and exerted all her strength. Like a vermilion bird, her attacks were fierce and swift, as if she was fighting with a peerless enemy. But at this time, Lin Sun had completely controlled the power of his saint. His every move was full of unstoppable power. No matter how Ruo Wu attacked or resisted, it was useless. Later, when Ruo Wu was about to be suppressed by Lin Sun, she suddenly said, I quit. As she spoke, her figure flashed, and she left the battlefield. Lin Sun was stunned and immediately smiled. He cupped his hands and said, Thank you for your guidance. Ruo Wu curled her lips helplessly. What guidance? It's just a whetstone. You don't need anyone's guidance at all. After a pause, she couldn't help laughing again, but I didn't lose to you in this battle. It's just a tie. I don't plan to fight with you again in the future. I want to keep this undefeated record. Little Silver muttered to himself. Women were really cunning. Lin Sun smiled. Ruo Wu was right. He didn't need anyone's guidance. There was only one reason why he was suppressed before. He had just become a saint and hadn't mastered the new power of the Supreme Saint yet. I understand that teleportation is just an instinctive power that all saints can control, not a real control of the law of space. Lin Sun sighed with emotion. Ruo Wu nodded and said, That's right. However, using this as an opportunity, one can come into contact with and comprehend the laws of space. I heard that when one's cultivation reaches the Sage King stage, one can rely on the law of space to comprehend their own battle domain. At that time, the vital energy in my body would circulate, and the nearby heavens and the earth would transform into a domain that fused with my own Tao and technique. Its might would be unbelievable. Lin Sun nodded. He had also heard of it. The path to the Saint Tao was divided into 3 great realms: the True Saint Realm, the Eminent Saint Realm, and the Saint King Realm. Every realm had its own profound mysteries. For example, the True Sage Realm, grasping sage essence, opening the chaos whole world, and establishing the origin Tao mountain were the initial stages of the Sage Tao. On the other hand, the Eminent Saint Realm was valued by the word grand. It was grand and boundless. An elephant was shapeless, and the greatest sound was silent. Attaining this realm was like attaining a grandmaster figure in the Saint Realm. As for the Saint King Realm, it was known as the King of Saints, the dominator of the realm. The great way and Tao that they mastered were extremely incredible, and they belonged to the peak of the Saint Tao. For Lin Sun, he had just entered the True Sage Realm. The only difference was that he was seeking the ultimate Saint Tao, which was unique and different from the rest of the world. Master, we Silver was about to say something. Suddenly, a dull sound came from outside the secret realm of the underground palace. Here they come again. Silver flew into a rage, and his eyes turned red. Those old bastards have killed at least thousands of strong practitioners in the ancient desolation realm in the past 2 months. Ruawu also looked at Lin Sun with cold eyes. Lin Sun looked calm, and his black eyes were cold. He said, "They probably think that we can only swallow our anger and be trapped here." Deep in his heart, an irrepressible killing intent began to roar and boil like lava. "Let's go." Lin Sun turned around and rushed out of the secret realm of the underground palace. "Little Tian, let's go," Silver shouted, full of murderous intent. "It's time to pay blood for blood." Ruo Wu's figure was like a phantom, and her clear eyes were full of killing intent. They're finally gone. The green divine refinement ancestral tree suddenly opened a pair of eyes that were formed from dense tree markings, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from its shoulders. Outside the abyss, Lei Shue's face was gloomy. It had already been 2 months, but there was still no movement from the bottom of the abyss. This caused him to be filled with anger, especially when Xueqingyi left the blood demon realm for the prison secret realm half a month ago. He had given a death order. If he couldn't kill Lin Sun and Ruo Wu when he returned, don't blame him for being merciless. This made Lei Shue's face extremely ugly. He was a top saint, but he was threatened by Xueqingyi like this. He felt embarrassed, but in the end, he could only endure it. But he had nowhere to vent his anger, which made Lei Shue very depressed. In the past 2 months, almost all the 2-legged sheep in the blood demon realm have been caught, but they haven't been forced out yet. A man in green frowned. "If this continues, when will we be able to kill the adulterous couple?" Shi Taixing, a top saint. This person was an old monster of the golden demon snake bloodline. He was dressed in green and had a jade-like face. He looked extremely young. No matter what, that kid has completely missed the chance to enter the prison secret realm and fight for the opportunity to become a saint. It's not bad. A man in a blood-red Taoist robe with his hair in a bun said lightly. Feng Yunk, a top saint. Legend had it that he had lived for 8,000 years and had once bathed 13 countries in the blood demon ancient realm in blood. Countless saints had died in his hands. We're 7 top saints, but we can't even kill an adulterous couple. That's not bad. Another old man in a luxurious robe with blood-red eyes snorted coldly. A faint and terrifying demonic power surrounded him, causing the void to collapse. Song Xing Kuan, one of the deacons of the Khanate demon sect, was also a very old top saint. "Then what do you think we should do?" A purple-clothed woman with silver hair and a delicate appearance said coldly. He Qing Wei, a top saint of the golden-winged dragon crane bloodline, had an extremely high status. For a moment, all the top saints fell silent. Lin Sun and Ruo Wu had been hiding in the abyss, leaving them helpless and depressed. Damn it! A burly middle-aged man with a tiger's beard gritted his teeth and exuded a monstrous and ferocious aura. "If that adulterous couple dares to show themselves, I promise I'll be the first to kill them." On the other side, a thin man with a feminine appearance and a crane cloak spoke with a hoarse voice. The burly middle-aged man was called Tu Wankong, and the feminine man was called Tu Yanwen. They were both from the Blood-Winged Demon Clan, one of the top 10 clans in the Blood Demon Ancient Realm. Even in the 9 regions battlefield, these 7 peerless saints were a force that could not be underestimated. They were enough to make any force fear them. But now, all of them had gloomy expressions on their faces, and their expressions were extremely ugly. It had been 2 months. They didn't want to wait here forever. "Master, a new batch of 2-legged goats has been sent here." A group of overlords from the Blood Demon Ancient Realm flew over, each of them holding a group of captured overlords from the realm of Ancient Desolation. "Kill them and throw them into the abyss," Lei Shue said without hesitation. Since he had nowhere to vent his anger, he could only vent it on the captured experts of the Ancient Desolation Realm. At the same time, he stood up, took a deep breath, and said in a thunderous voice, "Do you really think we can't do anything to you if you hide down there?" Next time, I'll capture all your friends, clansmen, and fellow disciples and kill them one by one. Let's see if you can still hold it in then." His ruthless voice resounded in the world. Then he waved his sleeves and was about to kill the captured overlords and throw them into the abyss. At that moment, an angry voice came from the abyss. "A bunch of old bastards can't wait to die? I'll fulfill your wish now." Lei Shui was stunned, and then he grinned and looked excited. Finally, they couldn't help showing up. At practically the exact same moment, Shi Taixing, Feng Yunk, He Qing Huai, and the other peak saints stood up simultaneously while the gloominess between their brows was completely wiped away, and it was replaced by a wisp of excitement, bloodthirst, and impatience. They had been waiting for too long, and they urgently needed to vent. Under everyone's gaze, Lin Sun, Ruo Lu, Little Silver, and the sky-splitting demonic butterfly appeared in the abyss one after another. "Ha, you're all out. Good, good, good." Lei Shui looked up to the sky and laughed. The overlords from the blood demon ancient realm nearby also laughed. Lin Sun looked calm. His cold eyes swept across the field and saw the captured overlord from the realm of ancient desolation. Each of their faces showed fear, despair, numbness, anger, and so on, like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. He also saw the undisguised excitement and killing intent of Lei Shui and the other top sages. Deep in his heart, the uncontrollable hatred and killing intent suddenly surged through his whole body like a landslide and a tsunami. Only Lin Sun looked calmer and calmer. Anyone who knew him knew that when he was really angry, Lin Sun never showed any emotion, because that kind of hatred and anger had filled his whole body. The next moment, he said word by word, "Today, if any of you can leave here alive, I, Lin Sun, will destroy my own Taoism." After that, he took a step forward. Boom! An obscure and miraculous grand formation instantly arose nearby the abyss, and dense Tao markings flowed like tidewater. It covered Lin Sun. "Ha ha, this stupid thing. How dare he try to kill us? Isn't he trapped by the formation in one step?" Lei Shui laughed, completely ignoring Lin Sun's words. The others also sneered. How stupid he was. Before taking action, he didn't notice that they had already set up a formation near the abyss. Chapter 1537. This formation was called the Six Harmonies Helllock. When one stood within it, the surroundings would be sealed and transformed into an area of confinement. Even a sage couldn't escape the fate of being trapped. Therefore, when Lin Sun was trapped as soon as he said those tough words, Lei Shui and the others felt it was so ridiculous. Little Silver was also laughing at the ignorance of those peerless sages. It was ridiculous that such a formation could trap Lin Sun. In the ancient desolation realm, everyone knew that Lin Sun was a Taoist tattoo master who could turn something rotten into something magical. Sure enough, the next moment, under the astonished gaze of the crowd, Lin Sun stepped out of the Six Harmonies prison lock formation lightly. This, Lei Shui and the other smiles suddenly froze. How could it be possible? If Lin Sun had chosen to break the formation, they wouldn't be so shocked. The point was that Lin Sun seemed to be unaware of the Six Harmonies prison lock formation from the beginning to the end. He just walked out of it openly. How'd he do that? Lei Shui and the others were surprised and doubtful. They all wondered if there was a flaw in the formation. "Why don't you laugh?" Lin Sun's black eyes were like lightning as he glanced at Li Xiu and others with a sneer. Humph! Tu Yanwen from the Bloodwing Demon clan, who had a feminine appearance, sneered. So what if he walked out of the formation? What's the difference between that and death? Stupid. As he spoke, he suddenly stretched his body. Boom! A dazzling bloody light surged out from his body and soared into the nine heavens, shattering the clouds in all directions into powder. Strands of blood-red light that were thick like chains flowed on Tu Yanwen's body, and they were like numerous crystalline blood-red flood dragons that moved through his body. The might they revealed was sufficient to shake the heavens and the earth, and it was even capable of causing gods and ghosts to retreat. The nearby overmatches of the blood demon ancient realm were all shocked and retreated. This was the power of a peerless sage. It was too noble. Don't use a butcher's knife to kill a chicken. Tu Yanwen is obviously too anxious. He is worried that we will kill him first. Well, let's fulfill his wish. Lei Shui smiled disapprovingly. He's too strong. Those who were captured in the ancient desolation realm had already recognized Lin Sun's identity. There was a glimmer of hope in their hearts, but when they saw this scene, they were completely desperate. The power of such a peak-level saint was simply boundlessly terrifying, causing them to feel like they were about to collapse and suffocate. How could Lin fight with them? Little fellow, there aren't many who can make me so eager to kill. You're very lucky, but also very unfortunate, because you're about to be tortured to death by me. In the soft and gloomy voice, Tu Yanwen took a leisurely step, reached out his hand casually, and grabbed Lin Sun across the air. At this time, only Little Silver and Rual Wu were the calmest, even showing a touch of pity. Did this idiot still think that Lin Sun was not a saint? Boom! A blood-red hand condensed into form from Saint Dao laws threw space into disorder, and it carried a might that covered the heavens and the earth as it pressed down towards Shenxi. At the same time, Lin Sun took action. His movement was also very casual. He just threw a punch in the air, and the simple and solid cyan fist print was crystal clear, as if it were made by nature. Although it looked ordinary when he punched out, the blood-colored hand that was charging at him suddenly shattered like fragile glass. In the rain of light, the fist light swept through the air, tearing a straight gap, and the deafening whistling made the world change color. Tu Yanwen almost couldn't believe his eyes. Almost out of instinct, he attacked again, pinched his palm and fingers, and slapped hard. Boom! In the earth-shattering collision sound, Tu Yanwen's body retreated violently, and he almost coughed up blood. His face changed in an instant, as if he couldn't believe it. You've become a saint. You just know? When the voice sounded, Lin Sun's figure disappeared out of thin air, and then he appeared in front of Tu Yanwen, striking down with his palm. The Swanee Seal. However, the Swanee Seal had already undergone earth-shaking changes. It was entangled with the terrible power of the Saint Dao, and a light of Tao was flying. When Lin Sun's voice fell, boom, Tu Yanwen, who was caught off guard, was severely smashed out. His mouth and nose were bleeding, and his cheeks were smashed. He screamed miserably. It only took a blink of an eye for this sentence to come out and fall. Tu Yanwen, the top saint, was blown away. All the people present were shocked, and all of them were dumbfounded. Lei Shui and the others' faces suddenly changed, and they almost couldn't believe their eyes. Before, they didn't take it seriously, thinking that Tu Yanwen was in a hurry to stand up and fight, which was a bit wasteful and ungraceful. Unexpectedly, in the blink of an eye, Tu Yanwen was seriously injured, and the young man, whom they regarded as an ant, showed the terrible power that only the top saint had. He had become a saint. This fact was unacceptable to Lei Shui and the others, because they had already concluded that Lin Sun, who was trapped under the abyss and missed the opportunity to enter the secret realm of absolute prison, was doomed to miss the opportunity to compete for the top saint. But who could believe that he had become a saint and mastered the power of the top saint? This blow made Lei Shui and the others feel as if they had been hit by a stick. How could this be possible? In the distance, the excited overmatches of the Blood Demon ancient region had long been dumbfounded, and they probably couldn't accept such a scene. Boom! Lin Sun didn't stop at all from beginning to end. After defeating Tu Yanwen, he had already chased after him again. At this time, he showed his real strength. His body was flowing with brilliant and vast qi, and his black hair was fluttering with holy light, as if he had come from the sacred. Every move of his had the power to suppress the sky and dominate the world. Swish! He pressed his fingers together, and a thin, dazzling, golden-sharp light appeared. Cut! Lin Sun's black eyes were cold, and he chopped down from the sky. Tu Yanwen's hair was disheveled, and he shouted. The holy power around him, like a crystal blood-colored dragon, roared and turned into a palm print with a range of 30 meters. But in just a moment, it was torn apart by Lin Sun's golden sharp light, and exploded in the void. The blazing bloodlight rushed in all directions. Puff! There was a bloody wound on Tu Yinwen's chest, which was so deep that the bone could be seen. He was almost cut open. He turned pale with horror. A mantis trying to stop a chariot is too weak. Lin Sun said casually. The atmosphere in the field had become extremely silent. Everyone was shocked by the power shown by Lin Sun. Even if Lin Sun had stepped into the peak of the saint realm, he had just become a saint. How could he be so powerful? Even Ruo Wu didn't realize until now that Lin Sun had obviously reserved his strength in the previous duel in the abyss. Otherwise, she would have been suppressed long ago. Thinking of this, Ruo Wu sighed in her heart. How could she not understand that Lin Sun did this to save her face? Arrogant. Suddenly, Tu Wonkong, who was as strong as a mountain, attacked, trying to stop Lin Sun from attacking Tu Yinwen. Boom! Streaks of lightning visible to the naked eye gathered from all directions, triggering the power of heaven and earth. With Tu Wonkong as the center, the nearby void collapsed and was filled with a thunderstorm sea. He punched out like the angry thunder god. The bright thunder and lightning poured into his fist like a great river, breaking the void. His fist swept across the sky with the momentum of splitting open the sky. Showy but impractical. Nice to look at, but useless. Lin Sun didn't even look at it. He waved his sleeve, and the golden divine light swept out, crushing all the power of the fist and dissipating in the void. Tu Wonkong came fast and left even faster. He felt like he was swept by a storm, and his body was shaken out uncontrollably. A peerless saint was beaten back by a flick of his sleeve. Seeing this scene, Lei Shui and the others changed their faces again. They finally dared to confirm that Lin Sun had not only become a real peerless saint. Moreover, his combat power was incredibly strong. It should be known that both Tu Yinwen and Tu Wonkong were old monsters in the saint realm, who had been immersed in this realm for many years. But in front of Lin Sun, they were as vulnerable as ants shaking a tree. There was no doubt that this was too shocking. Let's do it together. Lei Shui and the others completely realized that the situation was not good. Previously, they were full of anger, thinking that they had lost face because they failed to kill Lin Sun in time. But now, how dare they think so? As long as they were not fools, they knew that Lin Sun, who was regarded as an ant at any time, was now the same existence as them, and his combat power was even more terrible. Even if they racked their brains, they couldn't figure out why Lin Sun could pass the tribulation and become a saint under the abyss. But they couldn't care so much. Now, they had to take action and kill Lin Sun immediately. Boom! Lei Shui's figure flickered as he formed layer upon layer of blood-colored stone tablets. There were a total of 108 of them, and they were linked together to form a strange forest of blood-colored stone tablets that slaughtered down. Up! Shi Taixing, dressed in cyan, roared. His sleeve fluttered, and a 3-foot-long red sword emerged, shining with peerless sharpness. The edge of this sword was condensed from the purest Saint Tao laws, and it was even to the extent that one could see that the edge of the sword was branded with dense markings of the Tao that formed layer upon layer of profound phenomena. Swish! Like a waterfall across the sky, the red sword chopped at Lin Sun. Feng Yunque, Song Xing Kun, and He Qinghuai also attacked from different directions, either with their treasures or with Taoist magic. For a time, the world was chilling, and the land within 1,000 miles was filled with the terrible power of Saint Tao, which shattered the void, collapsed the rocks, burned the vegetation, and cracked the earth. The scene of a group of peerless sages attacking was like the arrival of a catastrophe. Even Ruo Wu and Little Silver, who were full of confidence in Lin Sun, couldn't help but feel nervous, because all the attacks were directed at Lin Sun. But Lin Sun's face remained unchanged. He was still calm and composed. Along with a wave of clanging sword howls resounding around him, an expanse of dazzling sword chi flashed out like tidewater. It was ghastly, dense, and extremely sharp. It seemed as if it intended to slash the world apart and slash down the sun, moon, and stars, and it contained an extremely terrifying force. It was the 3,000 Taishian sword Qi nurtured in his acupoints. Until the attacks arrived, Lin Sun suddenly stretched his body, and his black eyes burst out divine light. Break! As Lin Sun gently spat out a word, the 3,000 Taishian sword Qi, which had been accumulating power for a long time, lit up the world in an instant and roared out together. The 3,000 Taishian sword Qi swept across the sky. They wanted to compete with the enemy when they became saints today. Chapter 1538. Rumble. The world was in complete disorder. Streaks of sword Qi crisscrossed, emitting brilliant sword light with unstoppable sharpness and unstoppable momentum. However, if one looked closely, the overlapping and dense sword Qi contained a mysterious and miraculous rhythm as they slashed out. Every time it moved, it was like a charge of thousands of troops and horses. Boom! 3,000 Taishian swords moved for the first time, and the 108 blood-colored steels nearest Lin Sun were all cut into pieces as if they were tofu. Lei Shuexiu coughed up blood and staggered back. 3,000 Taishian swords moved for the second time, and a red sword blade engraved with dense Taoist patterns was like a prey bitten by a group of sharks. In a flash, it burst into pieces. Shi Taixing, who was dressed in a green robe, suddenly changed his face. He let out a muffled groan and retreated with a pale face. When 3,000 Taishian swords moved for the third time, there was an earth-shattering explosion. The void there exploded, and the destructive wave of the divine Tao swept out. The surrounding area was trembling. Immediately, Feng Yunque, He Qinghuai, and Song Xingkun, the three top sages, all screamed in pain and were shaken back from the battlefield. The three sword Qi attacks were actually produced in an instant, which made people feel that Lin Sun had broken through all enemies in one fell swoop after releasing 3,000 Taishian swords. The undefeatable godly prowess, the peerless demeanor, shocked everyone at the scene. Master is too fierce, isn't he? Little Silver was dumbfounded. This is the real, peerless saint realm, and also the goal that I have been pursuing for thousands of years. The demonic butterfly was obviously very excited, waving its wings and murmuring absent-mindedly. It seems that we just need to watch the battle. Ruo Wu's lips curled up, and her eyes were full of splendor. She had guessed that when Lin Sun became a sage, he would definitely shine. But when she witnessed the divine power he exuded in the battle, she still felt extremely amazed and shocked. Was this the peerless saint path that belonged to him alone? Lin Sun's figure appeared in the smoke and dust. His body flowed with a clear light that seemed divine and eternal. It was pure, clear, and translucent, and it emanated a dignified aura that was sufficient to cast a shadow on the heavens and the earth. However, at this moment, he raised his hand and maintained a strange posture of covering it. Under his palm were the captured experts of the realm of ancient desolation. Obviously, in the previous earth-shaking collision, Lin Sun had spared some of his strength to protect these overlords of the ancient desolation realm, so that they wouldn't be affected by the battle. Ruo Wu was moved. At this moment, he still wanted to protect them. How lucky were the experts in the ancient desolation realm? Whoosh! Lin Sun waved his sleeves, and these experts of the ancient desolation were teleported to Ruo Wu. Then, he looked at Lu, Shuexiu, and the others. I heard that the extreme paths towards the Tao have never been severed in the Blood Devil ancient region. But now it would seem like the extreme paths all of you have stepped foot on are nothing great, and they're not worth mentioning. An indifferent voice resounded throughout the area, like the sonorous voice of the great Tao. The faces of Lu, Shuexiu, and the others were gloomy and extremely gloomy. It was difficult for them to calm down. Their hearts were rolling like stormy waves. They had predicted that an ant would never become a saint, but miraculously, he had become a saint. It was hard for them to believe. But now, this ant, who had just set foot on the peak of the saint realm, showed an unprecedentedly powerful strength, which was even more difficult for them to accept. Why was it like this? They couldn't figure it out no matter how hard they racked their brains. It's indeed surprising that you're lucky enough to become a saint. But do you really think that we can't do anything to you? Lu Shueshio's face was grim, and he spoke word by word, full of killing intent. Then let's fight. Lin Sun's response was very simple, concise, and powerful. His clothes fluttered in the wind. Although he was alone, he was indomitable and indomitable. Humph! Lu Shueshio and the others looked gloomy. It was hard for them to accept that an ant who was despised by them suddenly turned into a dragon like them. And hearing Lin Sun's provocative words, they were even more annoyed. No matter what, you're just a man who's just set foot on the peak of the Saint Realm. Do you really think that you can be invincible in this realm? The eyes of Shi Taixing, who was dressed in green, flickered as he said coldly, "Your arrogance and conceit are destined to take your life." In the previous confrontation, although some of them had been injured, at the bottom of it all, they had only been caught off guard. Moreover, these injuries were not worth mentioning at all. Therefore, they were not afraid of Lin Sun, even though they knew that he was strong. Invincible in this realm? Hearing this, Lin Sun thought about it seriously, and then spat out 4 words from his lips. It's just around the corner. These 4 words contained an air of invincible confidence in his calmness. Lu Shueshio and the others frowned as if they had heard the funniest joke in the world. They didn't know whether Lin Sun was arrogant or ignorant. Looking at all the peerless saints in the 8 regions, who dared to say that they were invincible? Who dared to say that they were invincible? No, even if the 8 masters of green darkness rose to the peak of the Saint Realm, they wouldn't dare to say that the invincible realm was just around the corner. How dare Lin Sun say that? He was so arrogant. This man has just become a saint, so his state of mind is unbalanced. It's normal for him to be arrogant. Let's do our best and kill him. It's equivalent to breaking the backbone of the ancient desolation realm. Lu said gloomily, "Today I, Lin Sun, will use you 7 as targets to practice my Tao." This time, Lin Sun took the lead. Boom! He stepped in the void and directly punched. The bright fist energy brought about raging waves of the saint's spirit in the void. The shining fist energy illuminated the mountains and rivers. Chop! Without hesitation, Lu took out a long and narrow cyan saber, shaped like a flying kite, and directly chopped down. One strike. The long saber chi, like a divine rainbow, crossed the sky and collided with Lin Sun's fist. Bang! 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 The saber chi was broken piece by piece, destroyed like a hot knife through butter. Wherever the fist force passed, everything was crushed and broken apart. Li's pupils shrank. Swish! Thousands of red swords swept up. Under the control of Shi Taixing, they whistled away like a storm of swords. Almost at the same time, Feng Yunque, He Qinghuai, and Song Xing Kuan also attacked. Each of them restrained their contempt and regarded Lin Sun as an equal opponent, without any previous neglect or carelessness. Seeing this, Lin Sun snorted and suddenly opened his mouth, spitting out a dragon's roar. Moo! It was as if a group of dragons were roaring between heaven and earth. Visible sound waves turned into bright and blazing golden ripples and spurted out of Lin Sun's mouth. In an instant, it swept across the whole battlefield, shaking the sky and the earth, and the land in all directions was swept by the terrible sound waves. Those overmatches of the blood demon ancient realm in the far distance of the battlefield had no time to dodge. One by one, their bodies exploded in horror and then turned into ashes. Boom! On the battlefield, the attacks of Lei Shueshio and the others seemed to have been ravaged by a storm of Tao sounds, and they were ruthlessly dispersed. Some mysterious and peerless Taoism collapsed like paper paste. Some saint artifacts with unfathomable might were blasted to the point they were on the verge of collapse and wailed incessantly. As for Li Xiao and others, they only felt that their souls were shaking and their blood was boiling. They were so uncomfortable that they almost coughed up blood. They had to use all their strength to resist the impact of the Tao sound. In the distance, Ruo Wu and Little Silver all gasped. With one punch and one roar, Lin Sun had disintegrated the attacks of 7 top sages. Judging from his casual manner, it was obvious that he didn't struggle at all. How could he be so horrible? They are both at the peak of the saint stage, but why does his power possess an unstoppable momentum? Yi Qinghuai's face changed. The gazes of Lei Shuexiu and the others flickered indeterminately, and they were similarly extremely shocked in their hearts while their expressions became heavy. Although they had all taken Lin Sun seriously and overestimated him, they didn't expect that Lin Sun's combat power was far stronger than they had imagined. However, before they could figure it out, Lin Sun had already roared, "Come again!" In an instant, Lin Sun, like a god descending to the world, came with a disdainful momentum. At this moment, he wantonly exerted the power after becoming a sage. In the battlefield, he regarded the 7 top sages as targets and demonstrated his own Taoism and Taoism. All kinds of different Taoism were at his fingertips, such as 9 strikes for shaking heaven, 9 changes of Calamity Dragon, void-breaking finger of Dian, Taishian sword Qi, Dharma scripture. On the battlefield, Taoism was like rain, light was flying, air waves rushed into the sky, and the sky was full of destructive phenomena. The previous spar with Ruo Wu was merely a spar and not a real bloody battle. But at this moment, Lin Sun just used his killing means, using the sages as a whetstone to sharpen his edge and temper himself in the battle. Looking from a distance, it was like immortals practicing martial arts. The battle between top sages was undoubtedly terrifying to the extreme. At this time, even an ordinary true sage would be in danger of being destroyed in body and soul, not to mention the strong practitioners of longevity, tribulation realm. Rumble. Above the void, Lin Sun alone performed Taoism, Tao development, and martial arts refinement. For a moment, the 7 top sages were suppressed. In fact, Lei Shui and the others did feel great pressure, and the more they fought, the more frightened they became. Lin Sun's power of the top sage realm seemed to be endless, and it had been transforming and refining at an amazing speed. No matter how many wonderful methods and Taoist arts they used, all of them were destroyed like a hot knife through butter under Lin Sun's attack. This made Lei Shui and the others look more and more serious, and they were more and more surprised. Even though it was clear that Lin Sun regarded them as a whetstone to temper his own Taoism and Taoism, they had no ability to refuse in this dangerous and unpredictable battle. Why on earth is this man so strong? Tu Wankong, the most irascible one, roared. A group of top sages were suppressed by Lin Sun, which made him angry. Not only Tu Wankong, but also Lei Shui and the others in the battle city felt a chill in their hearts. They really felt the real threat and fear. This man was like a demon and couldn't be judged by common sense. Chapter 1539. For the enemy, Lin Sun's strength after becoming a saint was too incredible and against the natural order. But for Lin Sun, all of this was what he should get after all the efforts he had made in the past. In order to forge an unprecedented path of cultivation, Lin Sun had accumulated a profound foundation in the longevity tribulation realm, which was enough to make any peers feel ashamed. In the heaven accessing place, at the 8th level of Green Cloud Path, he observed the state of creating something out of nothing and created the truth of life and death. In the 9th level of Green Cloud Path, he experienced the reincarnation of seeking truth, saw through the truth and illusion, and saw the truth of his own body. In the bloodthirsty battlefield, he meditated in front of the Taoist mountain for a month and understood the great way described by the Emperor of Calamity. In the 9,999 floors of the Emperor of Calamity, he awakened the original supernatural power and got the guidance of the golden cicada young man in the Emperor realm to break the Tao test. After returning to the ancient desolation territory, he traveled all over the world, experienced all kinds of people in the mortal world, and perceived the beauty of the world in the mountains and rivers. In a remote town, he refined his mind with the Tao of stone carving. In the secret realm of the underground palace, the ordeal of the killing heart house made him kill the thief in his heart, which promoted the transformation of his mind. The ordeal of the extreme Tao pavilion made him refine his own Tao and build the foundation of the Tao body. All the ordeals were like the precipitation of the extreme Tao. At the moment of facing the saint test, Lin Sun was completely enlightened. With the great wish of the saint as the guide, he broke the invisible and colorless saint test and made the three paths of soul refining, body refining, and spirit refining become saints at one stroke. Why become a saint? My heart is the heart of heaven, and my Tao is the Tao. Such a great wish of the saint had long been regarded as a taboo. But at the same time, when Lin Sun set foot on the top of the saint realm, he set foot on a road of Tao that was completely different from that of other saints. All the ordeals, transformation, precipitation, and enlightenment were like seeds. Now, after Lin Sun became a saint, these seeds blossomed and bore fruit. They blossomed and bore fruit. Rumble in the battlefield. The void was shaking and the divine light was rolling. Only Lin Sun was practicing martial arts and conquering the world, suppressing all the saints. "What did your master say just now?" Ruo Wu suddenly asked. Little Silver, who had been watching the battle fervently, was startled and then said proudly, "Being invincible among the absolute true saints is just around the corner." Ruo Wu took a deep breath. Her eyes shone brightly. "I believe you." Just watching the battle, Lin Sun's means made her tremble. She couldn't imagine that this was the fighting power of a strong man who had just set foot on the peak of the saint realm. "This kid is getting stronger and stronger." Song Xing Kuan shouted in anger, his heart trembling. "This is a demonic blade, borrowing our strength to sharpen its edge. We definitely cannot let him continue like this." Lei Shui roared. The suppression they suffered was getting stronger and stronger, to the point where they were almost unable to lift their heads. "I can only risk it." Without hesitation, the 7 peerless saints attacked with all their might. They wanted to reverse the situation and change the situation. In the sky, all sorts of Tao arts and treasures flew about. They emitted boundless radiance and divine might. That kind of power was enough to easily wipe out any true sage. But as soon as these attacks got close to Lin, they were swallowed and annihilated by a big abyss around him. It was like a clay ox entering the sea. "Break!" Shi Taixing, dressed in cyan, directly went all out. His cheeks were crimson red, and his black hair suddenly turned the color of frost. His aura rose steadily, and he became much stronger in an instant. Starlight attraction. Resplendent crimson sword light was released inch by inch from his palm. With every inch that was released, the might of the sword chi would increase by a great deal. When the red sword light turned to 3 feet, it was like the brightest ray of light in the world. The surrounding void seemed to be unable to bear the pressure of the sword chi and suddenly exploded. Everyone present couldn't help but feel creeped out. This kind of sword chi had such power as soon as it appeared. If it was cut out, what terrible lethality would it have? Puff! Shi Taixing's beard and hair flew in the air. He suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood on the red sword light. Boom! In an instant, the sword light seemed to come to life, like a killing edge sweeping out from the depths of the blood sea in hell. The terrible aura shook the world. Even Ruo Wu, who was watching the battle in the distance, couldn't help changing her expression. "Go!" With Shi Taixing's roar, the red sword light swept out. Its shape was like red lightning. Its momentum was like a flowing rainbow, and its fierce chi disturbed the universe and shook the stars. This sword was enough to shock ghosts and gods. This sword strike was also an attack that Shi Taixing, a peerless saint, had put all of his resources into. It was branded with all of his essence, chi, and soul. Lin Sun, who was practicing martial arts, also couldn't help showing a surprised look. At this time, his palm and fingers happened to condense a handprint. This handprint was made by pinching the middle finger with the thumb. When seeing the red sword light, he immediately reached out and gently pinched it. It was just like picking up a petal. The movement was gentle, free, and ethereal. Flower pinching finger. It was a secret Buddhism recorded in the great scripture of tranquility. It was an understatement, but it was full of a kind of zen charm of great freedom and wisdom. Then, under the astonished gaze of the crowd, the red sword light was pinched between Lin Sun's fingers. No matter how violently it struggled, it couldn't get rid of it. How is it possible? Shi Taixing's eyes bulged, full of shock and puzzlement. Earlier, after he executed Starlight Guide, he'd practically exhausted all the strength in his entire body, and all of it was converged into that wisp of sword light. This made his skin dim and his hair white. But he was very confident that this sword was enough to reverse the situation. But he never thought, with just a pinch of his fingers, the trump card containing all his efforts was firmly imprisoned like a dead earthworm. Even Lei Shui and the others were all scared and widened their eyes, as if they had seen a god. Bang! Lin Sun didn't use any force, but the red sword light was crushed and exploded between his fingers. The terrible red light rain poured down like a waterfall, sprinkling all over the sky. Puff! Shi Taixing coughed up blood as if he was struck by lightning. His breath suddenly became sluggish, and his whole body showed a posture of being on the verge of collapse. Swordsmanship is not used like this. Take a sword of mine. In the distance, Lin Sun commented casually. Whoosh! He waved his sleeve. An array of Taishan sword chi swept out. The sword chi was brilliant, the sword intent clanged, and the sword momentum pressed down the universe. Dodge! Lei Shui shouted to remind him. Shi Taixing shuddered and woke up from the shock. Almost instinctively, he moved into the void without hesitation. But the next moment, his body fell out of the void. He looked at Lin Sun in the distance in horror, as if he couldn't believe it. What swordsmanship is this? Puff! When his voice fell, a bloody hole suddenly appeared between his eyebrows. His eyes widened, and he fell down from the void. A sword shocked the world. Shi Taixing, the supreme saint of the Golden Snake lineage, was killed in both body and soul. There was a dead silence. It was difficult to kill a true saint, and it was even more difficult to kill a true saint at the peak. It seemed that even if such an existence was killed and all vitality was cut off, as long as there was a trace of his soul left, he could still survive. In fact, some powerful figures who had achieved sainthood through their souls could even save their lives through secret techniques when their souls were shattered into countless pieces. But everyone could see that Shi Taixing was completely dead. The sword pierced between his eyebrows and wiped out his soul. Even the vitality of his body was shattered. Even if an immortal came, he wouldn't be able to be saved. Sure enough, not long after, a mourning sound came from the sky, and the sky was filled with blood. He's really dead. Lei Shui and the others felt a chill run down their spine. It was not easy to become a saint, but once one succeeded, it was almost impossible to be killed, unless one had absolute power. But Shi Taixing was dead. This was like a stick hitting the heads of Lei Shui and the others. It made them completely realize that although their opponent had just become a saint, he already had the terrifying power to kill enemies in the same realm. In the distance, Rual Wu and Little Silver looked at each other, and they could see the shock in each other's eyes. When Lin Sun was in the longevity 9th retribution realm, he crossed the natural chasm and killed a true saint. It was already unprecedented and shocking. But now, as soon as he stepped into the saint realm, he killed a senior peerless saint like Shi Taixing. He was simply too fierce. In the field, the battle was still going on. After killing Shi Taixing, Lin Sun was still practicing martial arts to stimulate his potential to become a saint. All kinds of experiences came to his mind. Lei Shui and the others were completely shocked. They were unwilling to be suppressed like this again, and went completely crazy like cornered old rabbits. Lin Sun didn't dare to be distracted anymore. A peerless saint going crazy was not scary, but a group of them was different. Kill! Not long after, Tu Wonkong let out a roar. His body, which was as stalwart as a mountain, was emitting a blood-colored sacred light. Every inch of his skin was emitting a brilliant Tao radiance. When his muscles, bones, and skin were moving, they emitted a sound that sounded like metal cracking. Boom! With a shake of his body, he became 100 meters tall. When he punched, the sky and earth within 1,000 miles seemed to be affected, and there was a violent sound of collapse. Obviously, Tu Wonkong was desperate and used his trump card. Even Lin Sun seemed to be unable to bear it. With a bang, his body was smashed into the ground, and an unfathomably deep pit was created. He did it. Lei Shui and the others looked over nervously. This was Tu Wonkong's desperate blow, which was powerful enough to split mountains and split seas. In the distance, Ruo Wu and Little Silver were also nervous and looked over. This blow definitely couldn't kill Lin Sun, but if he was injured, it would definitely affect the next battle. Lin Sun, with your current strength, you're already worthy of our respect. I have a word of advice for you. Don't fight like a cornered beast. We can accept you as a member of the Blood Demon Ancient region and enjoy, Lei Shui shouted. Unfortunately, before he finished his words, a ray of clear divine light shot up to the sky. Lin Sun stood in the void. But unlike before, Lin Sun's body was flowing with the 9 pure Tao light from inside to outside. Through the dazzling and translucent skin, one could see that every single one of his bones was brilliant like divine gold and divine jade, and his internal organs were like numerous scorching suns. As his blood circulated vigorously, it emitted rumbling sounds that sounded like the beating of drums by the gods, and it surged through the heavens and the earth. Today is the second update. Goldfish is going to start his saved chapters, or else the 10 updates on Saturday will never be completed. Don't forget to vote. Chapter 1540. He is unscathed. Tu Wonkong's pupil shrank, and his face changed immediately. His body refining cultivation has also reached the peak of the saint realm. In the distance, Lin Sun's whole body was shining. His eyes were like a touch of cold lightning. Every inch of his body was covered with 9 pure Tao light, making him look like a god. Seeing this scene, Lu and Shuexiu were also worried. They had all reached the peak of the saint realm, so they knew much more about body refining than others. They all knew that it was more difficult and harsh for a body refining practitioner to reach the peak of the saint realm. Among the 7 of them, only Tu Wonkong had reached the peak of the saint realm. In the 8 regions, there were only a few sages who had attained the sage body level among the 1,000 sages. Tu Wonkong's desperate blow was so terrifying that they thought it was enough to hurt Lin Sun. But now it seemed that they were wrong. Or in other words, they were wrong from the beginning. Until now, they realized that Lin Sun's body refining cultivation was also at the peak of the saint realm. Whoosh, seeing Lin Sun was fine, Silver and Ruo Wu were relieved. Your strength is not bad, but you can't hurt me even if you cultivate for another 10,000 years. Lin Sun fixed his eyes on Tu Wonkong in the distance. Now, take my punch. Boom. Lin Sun took a step forward and came to Tu Wonkong in the void with only the strength of his body. Then he raised his fist and punched. The dazzling fist energy burst out with a roar of dragons and elephants, as if it was going to suppress the galaxy. The inheritance of the divine elephant martial emperor. However, it was displayed by Lin Sun with the profound meaning of 9 pure holy body tactics. The space between heaven and earth seemed to be squeezed by such a punch, and the terrible Taoist light made the space nearby collapse and explode. Oh no! Tu Wonkong's face changed. Although he was a saint at the peak of body refining and extremely confident, he was frightened and scared when he faced Lin Sun's punch. Open! He roared. His body, which seemed to be made of divine light, emitted the power to the sky, disturbing the wind and clouds. Bang! The two collided. The flesh and blood of Tu Wonkong's right arm exploded inch by inch from the palm to the arm. His whole body was blown away. He coughed up blood, and his expression was one of shock. Although they were both saints of body refining, compared with Lin Sun's strength, he felt helpless, small, and unshakable. Boom! Without giving Tu Wonkong time to think, Lin Sun had already rushed him. In a flash, Lin Sun punched 3 times. With the first punch, Tu Wonkong's body was like a sieve. His chi and blood were tumbling, and blood was flowing out of his 7 apertures. He was shaken so much that he saw stars. Tu Wonkong hastily retreated to dodge the second punch. However, he was firmly suppressed, and both of his arms exploded. For the third punch, the terrifying power of the punch completely shattered the defense of Tu Wonkong's body. His body was riddled with thousands of holes. His flesh and blood exploded, and many of his bones were broken. Boom! His body fell to the ground. But strangely, in just a few breaths of time, the injuries all over his body had healed. Only his deathly pale face and weak aura could prove the severity of the injuries he had suffered. This was a sage body. 4 such figures, unless every inch of their flesh and blood was crushed and completely wiped out, even a single drop of blood would be able to save their lives. That's all. Lin Sun's expression was cold. He suddenly waved his sleeves. Now I'll send you to hell. Boom! A great destroyer sword formation composed of 3,000 Taishian sword chi was formed. The dense sword chi shrouded Tu Wonkong. Tu Wonkong was completely terrified. Stop him! Lu Shui and the others tried their best to save him. They had been besieging Lin Sun before, but Lin Sun's speed was too fast and the power of his punches was too terrifying, so they were all suppressed. Now, seeing that Tu Wonkong couldn't hold on any longer, they all began to fight desperately. If they were defeated one by one, none of them would be able to leave alive today. Clang! But at the same time, Lin Sun took out the broken blade. The snow-white, illusory, and magnificent broken blade flew across the sky with a dazzling light, revealing a heaven-defying killing intent. Lin Sun's cultivation in spirit refining also broke out completely at this moment. Yuan formula, extremity formula, and death formula. The 3 inherited forces drove the broken blade to attack the enemies in all directions. Bang, bang, bang. In the field, the broken blade flashed and slashed, emitting a fierce and monstrous killing intent, destroying all the attacks. Lu Shui and the other top sages all changed their expressions. How could this boy's spirit-refining power be so terrifying? Lin Sun himself was controlling the 3,000 Taishian sword chi to kill Tu Wonkong. Puff! Puff! In the blink of an eye, Tu Wonkong's body was cut with countless bloody wounds, and blood flowed out like a waterfall. He screamed in pain and struggled with all his might. As a top sage in body refining, he was like a trapped beast, covered by dense sword chi. In fact, he had been seriously injured by Lin Sun's punches. Although he recovered with his body refining cultivation, he was injured after all, not a real immortal body. If your flesh, blood, and soul are all smashed and refined, can you still be resurrected? Lin Sun's eyes were cold. As he spoke, a wisp of star obliteration wei emerged on the surface of the 3,000 Taishian sword chi. Every time Tu Wonkong's flesh and blood was cut off, it would be devoured and refined by the terrible annihilation force, turning into nothingness. Tu Wonkong let out a painful roar. He was fully aware of the danger, but no matter how he struggled, it was useless. Lin Sun had made up his mind to kill Tu Wonkong. How could he allow Tu Wonkong to escape from the desperate situation? Tu Wonkong, who was covered by the endless sword chi, recovered every time his body was cut into pieces, but soon he would be cut into pieces again. In this cycle, his face became paler and paler, his eyes dimmer, and his breath weaker and weaker. The most terrible thing was that every time his body was cut into pieces, it was like suffering a cruel death by dismembering, which made Tu Wonkong almost collapse. Help me! Help me! Tu Wonkong was completely terrified and let out a beast-like roar. In the distance, Lu Shui and the others were also burning with anxiety, but they could only watch helplessly because their attacks were completely blocked by the broken blade. No matter how many Taoist arts and holy treasures they used, they couldn't break through the broken blade. Help me! Tu Wonkong's consciousness was blurred. He knew he couldn't hold on any longer, so he roared unwillingly before he died. But in the end, there was no help. Boom! The 3,000 sword formations completely destroyed his body. Even his flesh and blood were refined and annihilated, and he was completely erased from the world. Seeing this, Lin Sun couldn't help but sigh inwardly. It was so difficult to kill a physique refining saint. Fortunately, Tu Wankong was dead. Lin Sun put away the 3,000 Taishian sword qi that had devoured the enemy's blood and looked at Lu Shui and the others. In the sky, the blood light was like a curtain, and the sound of mourning resounded, making the world tremble. Tu Wankong is also dead. Lu Shui's face changed completely. His lips were trembling, and he was no longer as calm as before. In the past, he didn't care about the strong practitioners of the ancient desolation realm at all. He regarded them as two-legged sheep, like livestock at his mercy. But now, he began to panic and fear. First, Shi Taixing and then Tu Wankong both died here, causing the strange phenomenon of saints falling. Who wouldn't be afraid? Your master has killed the most difficult one to kill. Next, I'm afraid none of these old beasts can resist his attack. Rual Wu said slowly, her mood surging. Little Silver nodded fiercely and said with a fanatical look, "Wait and see. I also want to become a saint as soon as possible. When I awaken the god-slaying talent, I will be able to kill these old beasts as easily as killing chickens like my master." Boom! While the two were talking, Lin Sun in the field had already started to kill without delay. His strength had been exposed. As long as the other 5 saints weren't stupid, it was very likely that they wouldn't fight desperately like before. Instead, they would think about how to escape. At this time, he had to finish the battle quickly. Chop! Lin Sun was like a dragon returning to the sea. He raised his broken sword, and the 3,000 Taishian sword qi attacked again. At the same time, with the strength of his physique refining cultivation, he was not afraid of ordinary attacks at all, so he could rush around unscrupulously. Before Lin Sun had the intention to kill them, he had already suppressed these top saints, let alone now. Soon, Lu Shuexiu and the other 4 were oppressed to raise their heads. Everyone's face changed, and fear arose in their hearts. He was too strong. Since they became top saints, they had never seen such a heaven-defying opponent. Lin Sun alone made them helpless and defenseless. Puff! Before long, the broken sword flashed, and a bloody head was cut off. It was Tu Yanwen. At the beginning of the battle, he was the first to attack Lin Sun, but he was seriously injured by Lin Sun. This also made him the weakest opponent, and he was killed by Lin Sun at this moment. His head was thrown into the air, and his eyes were wide open in disbelief. His headless body had exploded in the void, and the blood rain was flying. The third top saint was dead. Next, Lin Sun didn't stop. He flashed in the void and fixed his eyes on Feng Yuck. This man, dressed in a blood-red robe, was actually a butcher from the black-striped magic bees, and his means were extremely cruel. When he noticed Lin Sun's eyes, Feng Yuck's heart trembled, and then he roared, "Little bastard, go to hell." An ancient blood-red seal rose into the air, on which there were 18 bloody diagrams like purgatory. There were mountains of corpses and seas of blood, mountains of white bones, and the blood of all living beings, blood burial seal. It was a demonic weapon of the divine path, evil and bloody, and its power was unbelievably strong. If he didn't risk his life, Feng Yuck wouldn't be willing to sacrifice this treasure, which he regarded as his most precious treasure. Whoosh, between the heaven and the earth, the chilly wind was roaring, and the blood river was surging. Figures like bloody Rakshasa rushed out of the blood burial seal. In the blink of an eye, the world seemed to turn into a bloody, demonic domain. Even Lin Sun's eyes narrowed. How many strong people had to be killed to refine such a bloody and terrible treasure? Buzz, the next moment, Lin Sun turned his palm, and the Tower of Endless Tao emerged. The body of the tower was like divine gold and glazed, full of immortal spirit. "Go!" He raised his hand, and the Tower of Endless Tao roared and rushed out. Just a piece of black golden light flowed out of the tower, and the bloody smell between heaven and earth was swept away. Chapter 1541. Boom! The divine light of the pagoda soared into the sky and covering the earth. When it came down from the sky, a grand and boundless sound of Tao drifted out. Vaguely, there seemed to be mysterious characters reflected from the pagoda. Every character had the profundity of suppressing mountains and rivers and restraining ghosts and gods. In an instant, the blood burial seal was suppressed to the point of wailing, and the evil, bloody light on it collapsed and melted like ice and snow. Bang! What was even more shocking was that this bloody saint treasure that had always been nurtured in Feng Yun-Kei's body as a life saint weapon was now showing signs of cracks. With a puff, Feng Yun coughed up blood and staggered as if he had suffered a backlash. No! He was shocked and angry. He roared and wanted to take back the treasure because once his life saint weapon was destroyed, it would also damage his cultivation. Crack! But under the suppression of the Tower of Endless Way, the blood burial seal directly cracked and then exploded in the air. The terrifying bloody fluctuation caused the void to turn into a thick bloody color that constantly tumbled. Feng Yun spat out a mouthful of blood. His face suddenly became extremely pale, and his eyebrows were full of anger and madness. Possessing a life-bound saint artifact was already an extremely difficult and demanding matter. Feng Yun had spent a great deal of time and effort to nurture the blood burial seal. But now, as soon as they fought, it was completely destroyed before it could show its power. How could Feng Yun not be angry? His heart was bleeding. There was also a burst of exclamation in the field. It seemed that no one had expected that the Tower of Endless Way that Lin Sun had used would be so terrifying. One look, and it was obvious that it was not an ordinary holy treasure. Otherwise, how could it destroy Feng Yun's life saint weapon with a single blow? Even Lin Sun felt a ripple in his heart. In the past, when he had not become a saint, even if he had the power to kill saints, when he used the Tower of Endless Way, he could only display a small part of its power. But now it was different. When he controlled it with the power of a peak true saint, the true power of this treasure was revealed. Based on its might, it really deserved to be a precious treasure passed down in Mount Innerheart. It was too extraordinary, and it was world-shaking. Little bastard, I want you to die. Feng Yun roared angrily, his beard and hair flying in the air. He was completely crazy as he rushed towards Lin Sun. Lin Sun's expression was cold and calm. Meanwhile, the great Tao without end pagoda spun around and released a dark golden light, instantly suppressing the cloud-sealing tower's attack. Boom! Then, under everyone's shocked gazes, Feng Yun-Kei, the peerless saint, suddenly turned into the size of an ant. His body was crushed by the Tower of Endless Tao, and his soul was destroyed. Not to mention corpses, not even their souls were left. They were directly erased from the world. The eyeballs of Lu Shuexiu and the others almost popped out. Before, when Lin Sun didn't use his treasures, he had suppressed them so much that they couldn't even lift their heads. Later on, the broken blade swept out, but it was not a true holy treasure. Although its power was terrifying, it was not enough to threaten these peerless saints. Because of this, Lei Shuexiu and others were very suspicious that Lin Sun, who had just become a saint, should not have any special holy treasures in his hands. Who would have thought that the appearance of the great Tao Endless Tower would topple their understanding? What kind of holy treasure was it? How could it be so powerful? The great Tao without end pagoda is a treasure that Master obtained from the mortal world. It came from the secret realm of the ultimate ruins. There's a great mystery in it. Little Silver was excited and beaming with joy. Fairy Rual looked thoughtful. In the sky, the familiar morning sound of the saint fell again, and the sky was dyed red with blood. At this point, after Shi Taixing, Tu Wankong, and Tu Yinwen, Feng Yun-Kei, the peerless saint from the black-striped demonic wasps, was killed. At this time, only Lu Shuexiu, He Qinghuai, and Song Xingkuan were left. However, their faces were extremely livid, and there was an unconcealable fear between their brows. When the scenes of death happened one after another, they also sobered up from their anger and realized the danger and seriousness of the situation. Their bodies were all cold, as if they had fallen into an ice cave. In less than a quarter of an hour, 4 peak-level sages had been killed. Although such a loss was not enough to deal a huge blow to the Blood Demon Ancient Regions camp, it was still a huge blow. The most horrifying thing was that until now, their opponents were still safe and sound. How could they fight like this? No matter how unwilling Liu and the others were, they had no choice but to admit the cruel reality. This kid could not be defeated. Little bastard, my blood demon ancient region will never forget this enmity, Liu said fiercely. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly teleported and vanished in a flash, fleeing towards the distance. Let's go as well. He Qinghuai and Song Xing Kuan's expressions changed drastically, and they teleported at the same time to flee. Since the beginning of the battle, Lin Sun had never shown any signs of being shaken. Even when he was surrounded, he could suppress them to the point they couldn't even raise their heads. Such an opponent was enough to make these old fellows feel despair. I said that if you can escape today, I'll destroy my own cultivation. Lin Sun sneered. He had expected this, so the moment Xue Xiu escaped, his figure also disappeared. Swoosh! At the same time, his spirit left his body, and the holy soul Dharma, idol, charged out. He controlled the broken blade and attacked He Qinghuai, who was fleeing to the other side. Song Xing Kuan secretly rejoiced that he was not targeted. But before he could rejoice, his way was blocked by a graceful figure. Ruo Wu, who had been paying close attention to the battle, attacked at this moment. I can't bear to see him destroy his own cultivation, so you must stay. As soon as the cold voice sounded, Ruo Wu attacked without hesitation. Buzz! With a wave of her snow-white slender hand, the divine flames poured down with the power to incinerate the sky. At the beginning, when she appeared in Icewind Valley, she was chased by 7 top sages. She was injured along the way, which damaged her Taoist foundation. She had long been suppressing her hatred and anger, but now it was finally time to vent it. Boom! Her body was graceful and clean, and her beautiful breath carried a sacred charm. But when she attacked, her attack was fierce, not inferior to that of a man. Being blocked, Song Xing Kuan's eyes turned red, and he attacked with all his strength. He knew very well that the longer it took, the more time Lin Sun would take action, and that would be the time of his death. Boom! However, not long after the battle began, a world-shaking rumble resounded from the depths of the vast god refining forest from afar. Then, the morning sound of a saint fell from the sky. How could he die so soon? Song Xing Kuan trembled all over, and his face was aghast. His heart was covered with fear. How long had it been? In the depths of the forest in the distance, Lei Xue Xiu was annihilated, and there was no possibility of resurrection, because his head had been pierced by an arrow. At the moment of pursuit, Lin Sun pulled the insignificance bow and shot an arrow without hesitation. Without any accident, Lei Xue Xiu, the top sage of the Flying Kite Demon clan, was killed directly. The reason was very simple. Like the Tower of Endless Tao, Insignificance Bow was used by Lin Sun, who had the power of Absolute Sage, to show the real power of this fierce bow. On the other side, He Qinghuai, who was escaping, also heard the roar, saw the blood gathering in the sky, and the morning sound resounded. This caused her entire body to stiffen, and a chill ran down her spine. Are you really going to kill me? This is the blood demon world. Aren't you afraid of revenge? Feeling that Lin Sun was getting closer and closer, He Qinghuai couldn't help screaming and threatening him. Revenge? It's me who should retaliate against you. Behind, Lin Sun's holy soul looked indifferent. He controlled the broken blade and chopped it without hesitation. Life and death cut. Among the 6 cuts of Tian Yuan, no one could compare with life and death cut in terms of speed. The mystery of this strike was only one word: fast. Whoosh! He Qinghuai felt a stabbing pain in her eyes. She suddenly stopped moving and saw a sharp light flashing in front of her eyes. If she hadn't stopped in time, her throat would have hit the sharp blade directly. This made her take a breath of cold air, and she suddenly hit the broken blade with her palm. But because of this pause, Lin Sun's holy soul caught up with her. You can't escape. Lin Sun said calmly, and the broken blade chopped down without hesitation. Importation of punish. You're going too far. He Qinghai let out a shrill scream, took out a silver soft whip branded with dense runes, and whipped it like a silver dragon flying, shaking the universe and shattering the void. She was also desperately fighting. Bang, bang, bang. In the blink of an eye, they'd exchanged hundreds of blows, causing the world to turn upside down and the sun and moon to dim. Terrifying light and whip shadows swept in all directions. Boom! Suddenly, He Qinghai took a step forward while a pair of bright golden wings appeared behind him. They were like a pair of enormous scissors, and they bit down with a clang. This was the innate ability of the golden-winged dragon cranes, the dragon-winged scissors. It was peerlessly sharp and had the power to kill ghosts and gods. Bang! Amidst the earth-shattering sound of the collision, Lin Sun's holy soul shook slightly, and the broken blade was blocked. He sighed in his heart. Although the broken blade had undergone a complete transformation, it hadn't been completely transformed into a life-saint weapon, so its power was limited. Otherwise, it would have been easy to break through such a cultivation method. You're just a soul. How dare you stop me? Get lost. He Qinghai's confidence grew after succeeding in a single move. However, she was just about to continue fleeing. Boom! The Tower of Endless Tao fell from the sky and pressed her body under it. She didn't know how many of her bones were broken. She let out a scream, completely panicked, because Lin Sun himself had already rushed over. Whoosh! The Holy Soul Dharma form was put away and poured into the sea of consciousness. Lin Sun raised his hand to pick up the pagoda, as if he were lifting up an ancient divine mountain. The light of Tao smashed down again like a landslide and a tsunami. How dare you? He Qinghai's face changed, and she screamed in horror. But her voice stopped abruptly, covered by the terrible roar. Her body was smashed by the Tower of Endless Tao, and scarlet flesh and blood splashed everywhere. Buzz! Lin Sun was surrounded by a vast and unfathomable shadow of the great abyss. It swallowed fiercely, annihilating the smashed flesh and blood of He Qinghai. Ridiculous! Why wouldn't I dare? Lin Sun's eyes were cold. Above the sky, the sound of morning rang again. Lin Sun turned back without looking at it. There was still Song Xing Kuan. Goldfish is going to continue to save manuscripts. The day after tomorrow, I will try my best to give you 10 more. Chapter 1542. Song Xing Kuan, who was fighting fiercely with Ruo Wu, felt his heart sink when he heard the second morning sound after Shuexiu's. It was over. He Qinghai's wife was also in trouble. His face was pale, and his heart was full of horror. 1 against 7, and still able to kill 6 peerless sages. If this battle spread out, it was bound to shock the entire 9 regions battlefield. If it spread out from the 9 regions battlefield, the cultivation world of the 8 regions was bound to be shaken, wasn't it? After all, 6 peerless sages had fallen, and Song Xing Kuan also realized his fate. This time, he was doomed to die. At the thought of this, all his thoughts were burning, and even his fighting spirit was on the verge of collapse. He was not afraid of the enemy, but he was afraid that he could not see any hope. Boom! On the opposite side, Ruo Wu was keenly aware of the change of Song Xing Kuan's state of mind. Without hesitation, she used her trump card and attacked with all her strength. Her slender body was surrounded by surging divine flames. Every move she made was accompanied by Taoism, fierce and tyrannical, showing unparalleled momentum. In the distance, Lin Sun watched quietly. He had realized that Song Xing Kuan was doomed. Master, Silver stepped forward with a fanatical look. I also want to become a peerless sage. Little Tian also flew over, fluttering his wings and dancing around Lin Sun, saying, Me too. Lin Sun smiled, why not? This time, the 9 regions battlefield will definitely provide you with an opportunity to become a sage. He looked at the strong practitioners of the ancient desolation realm who had been saved. There were men and women, sages and kings of the longevity realm, but their bodies were all stained with blood, and their clothes were ragged. Almost all of them were injured. There was excitement, fanaticism, and admiration on their faces. Lin Sun's invincible posture in the battlefield had already shocked them and made them very excited. They were saved. This was their only thought. The taste of escaping from death made them have the impulse to kowtow and shed tears of gratitude when they met Lin Sun's eyes. But Lin Sun's words made them suppress their inner impulses. The people of the ancient desolation would rather die standing than live kneeling. This time, I saved you, and I hope that you can stand up and help us if you meet the strong practitioners of the ancient desolation in the future. His words caused everyone to fiercely nod their heads, their hearts surging. In the future, as long as Lin Sun was in the Nine Regions battlefield, the ancient desolation realm would have the hope to avenge the shame of their predecessors. Little Tian, take them to the secret realm of the underground palace to recuperate. When we leave the Blood Devil dimension, come back and take them with us. Lin Sun ordered. This was the Blood Demon realm, the base camp of the Blood Demon ancient region. Their enemies were everywhere in this vast territory. Considering the current situation of those experts in the ancient desolation realm, they would probably be in danger once they left his protection. Lin Sun knew that killing and death happened all the time in the Nine-Region battlefield, but since he saw it, he had no reason not to help. That was all he could do. The demonic splitter butterfly took the order and left, leading the group of experts from the realm of ancient desolation into the abyss. Lin Sun turned his attention back to the battlefield. Unsurprisingly, Song Xingkuan was eventually killed by Ruo Wu. However, his counterattack before his death also caused Ruo Wu to be injured. Fortunately, it was not serious, and she would soon recover. This made Ruo Wu feel more and more emotional. She had only killed a peerless saint who had lost his fighting spirit, but it had taken so much effort. Compared with Lin Sun, there was no doubt that she was much weaker. After this battle, she understood how terrifying Lin Sun's combat strength was after he stepped into the Peerless Saint realm. Invincible in the Peerless Saint realm was just around the corner. She believed it. If this happened in the realm of ancient desolation, your name would be known all over the world in less than a day. Even the sages could only look up to you. Ruo Wu's figure floated to Lin Sun's side, with a rare look of admiration on her beautiful face. And those ancient orthodoxies who were once hostile to you would be so scared that they would not be able to eat or sleep well. At the end of her words, she couldn't help but smile. Her red lips were moist, and her white teeth were pearly. Her smile was fresh and brilliant, like a flower bud blooming in the sunshine after the rain. Being praised like this, Lin Sun couldn't help but be speechless. By the way, what's your next plan? Ruo Wu raised her starry eyes and asked. When a young man in front of her was not fighting, his aura was indifferent and pure, like a solitary immortal. He didn't give people a sense of oppression, but people always felt that he was close but far away. Lin Sun put his hands behind his back, and his dark eyes were cold as he looked into the depths of the godly refining forest. In the past, I could only endure being hunted and hide in the secret realm of the underground palace. Now, I will fight back, and all the humiliation I suffered will be returned. Ruo Wu nodded. She could guess this result, but she wasn't sure. She said, "This is the blood demon world, where the power of an entire domain is gathered. There must be many peerless saints like Lei Xiu here. How long do you plan to kill before choosing to leave? What do you think if I kill my way into their lair?" Lin Sun asked. His words shocked Ruo Wu, and her starry eyes widened. She would never have thought that Lin Sun would be so daring. I can only say that if you really do that, it's no different from going into the dragon's pool and tiger's den. It's too risky. Ruo Wu frowned and said. Lin Sun's black eyes flashed. There's no harm in trying. At worst what? Lin Sun smiled and said, at worst, I could just escape back here. Ruo Wu was taken aback, and then she couldn't help but laugh as she said, You have shocking courage and know when to yield or when to stand tall. Lin Sun couldn't help laughing when he was described in such a way. Actually, Ruo Wu was very clearly aware that while Lin Sun seemed to be speaking casually, The danger he would encounter when he actually arrived at the city of Tao Protectors, where countless experts from the Blood Devil ancient region were gathered, was absolutely not as simple as he said. Now she could only pray that Lin Sun would stop while he was ahead after he vented his anger. After all, the 9-region battlefield had only been open for less than half a year, and there would be opportunities to kill enemies in the future. There was no need to rush. Master, the spoils have been cleaned up. In the distance, Little Silver flew over and said happily, "Even though those old bastards are extremely detestable, they're still very rich. Just the holy treasures alone are more than 10. Besides that, there are also some ancient books, elixirs, divine materials, rare treasures, and so on." As he spoke, he handed several storage treasures to Lin Sun. Lin Sun did a quick count and gave a part of them to Ruo Wu. "How can I accept your spoils?" Ruo Wu still wanted to decline, but Lin Sun persuaded her with an attitude that could not be refused. "Take it. We have gone through thick and thin together, and we should share our gains." In the end, Ruo Wu could only accept it. In the past, she had almost no interaction with Lin Sun, nor did they have any friendship. But after getting to know Lin Sun, she realized that being friends with Lin Sun could only be described with one word: happy. He was upright, decisive, brave, resourceful, broad-minded, and bold. It was an honor to be friends with such a strange man. "Master," the sky-splitting demonic butterfly returned. Seeing this, Lin Sun no longer hesitated and headed to the god-refining forest with Ruo Wu, Little Silver, and Little Tian. He wanted to fight back and cause havoc in the blood demon world. But the death of Lei Xiao and the others was not enough for Lin Sun. He would not forget that in the past 2 months, batch after batch of blood demon ancient region cultivators were killed and thrown into the abyss by the enemy, like livestock. He would also not forget that initially he chose to be generous because he did not want to see himself being coerced. He was a good man of the ancient desolation realm who was willing to die. The cultivators of the blood demon ancient region were all high and mighty, seeing them as 2-legged sheep that could be slaughtered at will, humiliating, trampling, and slaughtering them. How could such blood and hatred be tolerated? Now, Lin Sun only wanted to pay blood for blood, a tooth for a tooth, and kill to his heart's content. He wanted to kill until his enemies were terrified and their expressions changed. A man should kill his enemies mercilessly. 1,000 years of immortality lay in killing the enemy. An area of 500 kilometers had been transformed into scorched earth, and it was a scene of desolation. The battle between Lin Sun and the 7 peerless sages had affected the cultivators of the blood demon ancient region who were watching the battle nearby, and they died tragically from the shockwaves of the battle. Therefore, the cultivators of the blood demon ancient region who were scattered around the god-refining forest had no idea what was going on. What happened? Why is there such a huge commotion? Up in the sky, the sorrowful cries of the sages falling one after another. Well, what is going on? Deep within the god-refining forest, many powerhouses were shaking in fear. 2 months ago, the 7 peerless sages arrived and surrounded the abyss in the god-refining forest. Many powerhouses were anticipating a result, but today, sorrowful cries continued to echo throughout the forest. It was obvious that many sages had fallen deep within the god-refining forest. I heard that deep within the god-refining forest is full of danger and eeriness. Now that I think about it, it is indeed frightening. Do you think, could it be that Master Lei Shui and the others are in danger? Impossible. How could that little bastard Lin Sun be an opponent of the 7 peerless sages? Many discussions arose. No matter how they guessed, they were certain of one thing. Even if Lei Shui and the others were in danger, it was definitely not Lin Sun's doing, because he was not worthy. How could a 2-legged sheep from the ancient desolation realm hurt a peerless sage? That is, how could it be that little bastard? He's still alive? Suddenly, someone saw a lone silhouette walking over from afar. He was wearing a moon-white robe and had his hands behind his back. His aura was otherworldly. The discussion came to an abrupt end. All the powerhouses of the blood demon ancient region widened their eyes in fear was written all over their faces. If this guy is still alive, then wouldn't Master Lei Shui and the others? In the next moment, all the powerhouses of the Blood Demon ancient region died on the spot. One by one, their bodies exploded and their souls were destroyed. They didn't even have the time to scream before they died. Lin Sun's expression was neither sad nor happy. He was calm and collected. He did not even look at them. His footsteps never stopped as he walked straight ahead. A bloody massacre began to unfold from deep within the cultivating God forest. Chapter 1543. An inconspicuous black-striped hornet the size of a thumb was crouching on a branch and happened to see Lin Sun and the others. The black-striped hornet almost cried out in shock when it saw the experts from the blood-fiend ancient realm being killed without a sound. If the little bastard from the ancient desolation realm is still alive, doesn't that mean the lament of Saint Death was caused by Lord Lei Shui and the others? If that's the case, no, I must spread the news. The black-striped hornet immediately realized that the situation was serious. However, just as it flapped its wings and flew into the air, it saw a 3-inch-tall handsome man standing in front of it. Your clan is just like the lackeys of the black demonic dog clan in the ancient desolation realm. How detestable! Clang! Little Silver drew his sword. With a flash of sword radiance, the black-striped hornet was slashed into pieces. This godly refining forest is too strange. In the beginning, Lei Mujin, Shi Feng, and the other sages all died when they came here. Now that the lament of Saint Death is being heard, will Lord Lei Shui and the others repeat the same mistake? It's indeed strange. So many people died just to kill a 2-legged sheep from the ancient desolation realm. It's simply not normal. A group of experts from the blood-fiend ancient realm were discussing in low voices. All of them looked uncertain. They felt that there was a terrifying and strange aura in the depths of the dark forest that sent chills down their spines. Why don't we leave this place first? Someone suggested, which immediately drew the approval of the crowd. However, just as they were about to move, their gazes were suddenly attracted by a beautiful butterfly that was about the size of a palm and had wings that seemed to be made of black jade. What a beautiful butterfly! They were stunned and amazed. However, their expressions changed abruptly in the next moment. The demonic sky-cracking butterfly gently flapped its wings. Spatial cracks that were as sharp as blades suddenly appeared in the nearby space and covered the area. Puff! Puff! In the next moment, scarlet-red blood exploded like firecrackers, and it rose and fell in the surroundings. It was poignant and bloody. When the demonic sky-cracking butterfly disappeared, only a pile of broken limbs and pools of blood was left. The scene was horrifying. My lord, something big must have happened in the depths of the god refining forest. A group of experts gathered in front of a sage, all of them looking worried. This saint was dressed in a black robe. His expression was calm as he stared into the depths of the god training forest. After a while, he said, "No matter how big the change is, there are still Lord Lei Shui and the other 6 peerless sages to deal with it. Why are you all panicking?" But there just so happened to be 7 Saint Death chimes resounding in the sky just now. Someone gulped with difficulty. The black-robed man frowned and said, "This is just a coincidence. Do you think that a peerless saint would fall so easily? Idiot!" Everyone looked at each other and kept quiet out of fear. Coincidence? Then tell me, if I kill all of you, would that be a coincidence? A clear and melodious voice rang out. Who? The black-robed man roared and looked into the distance. A graceful figure bathed in gorgeous flames was walking out from the depths of the pitch-black forest. She wore a red dress, had jet black hair that flowed down like a waterfall, and a peerlessly beautiful face was suffused with a pure and holy sheen. All of a sudden, the black-robed man's expression changed. It was the woman who was once being chased by the 7 peerless saints. Why would she be here? Don't you think it's a coincidence? Sadly, sometimes coincidences mean death. Ruawu spoke softly. As soon as he finished speaking, this area was enveloped by an expanse of blazing divine radiance of flames. In the blink of an eye, everything within thousands of feet was incinerated. As for the black-robed saint and the powerhouses around him, all of them were turned into ashes and disappeared from the world. Scenes like this played out in the god-training forest at a shocking speed. Whether it was Little Silver, the demonic crack butterfly, or Wu, all of them had accumulated too much hatred and anger. Today, they were using their actions to exact their revenge. As time went on, painful screams, the pungent smell of blood, panic screams, and fleeing silhouettes, all of this happened within the god-training forest. A bloody scene with a massacre as the background slowly unfolded. Most of the experts in the god refinement forest were at the longevity tribulation realm. Only a small number of sages were ordinary true sages. To Lin Sun and the others, they posed no threat at all. They could only be described as vulnerable chickens and stray dogs. No, how could this be? Run, quick, send out the distress signal. Screams like this kept ringing out before they stopped abruptly and disappeared completely. The vast, godly refining forest had turned into a bloody slaughterhouse. However, Lin Sun and the others, who were regarded as two-legged sheep by the powerhouses of the blood demon ancient region, had turned into cold-blooded executioners. Kill, kill, kill. There was no mercy, and no hesitation. Didn't you see that lions and tigers gain fame by preying on their prey? Who would pity the deer? Didn't you see how many powerhouses of the ancient desolation realm had been brutally murdered in various areas of the blood demon territory? There was once a proud and unyielding saint who had his head chained and dragged around like a dead dog. There were once peerless beauties who had been abused, raped, and ravaged at will. They could neither live nor die, but their enemies still laughed arrogantly. Who could turn a blind eye to such humiliation, hatred, and tears of blood? Kill. Even if it was Lin Sun, no matter how weak his opponents were, he would not show any mercy and would not show any mercy. In just a few months, countless powerhouses of the ancient desolation realm had been killed and thrown into the abyss. Lin Sun would naturally avenge them. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn outside the god-training forest, Silver was panting, but his face was still filled with excitement as he shouted, "Awesome! Men like us should kill our enemies with our swords. We should kill until the sky and earth turn upside down and the mountains shake." The demonic crack butterfly fluttered its wings and said unwillingly, "It's a pity that there are too few opponents in the god-training forest. It's not enough to kill." Within the time it took for an incense stick to burn, they had swept through the entire god-training forest. Everywhere they passed, there was no one left alive. But Silver and the demonic crack butterfly were still filled with hatred. "Silver, I'll leave this to you. I want to know more about Xuechingi." With a thud, Lin Sun threw a captured saint onto the ground. He was too lazy to interrogate him and asked Silver to do it. Whoosh! In a flash, Little Silver plunged into the saint's sea of consciousness. The reason why Lin Sun paid attention to Xuechingi was because he was not only one of the 8 greats of Green Hell, but he was also the leader of the blood demon ancient region. He held great power and commanded the powerhouses of the various clans. Even the top saints had to listen to his orders. If he could kill this person, it would definitely deal a heavy blow to the blood demon ancient region. Not long after, Silver dashed out. The saint's soul had long been erased, and he died on the spot. Master, half a month ago, Xuechingi led the peerless figures of the major forces of the blood demon ancient region to the ancient desolation world, the heart of the 9 regions battlefield, under the escort of a group of top saints. Their objective was to enter the extreme prison secret realm and fight for the opportunity to become a saint. Silver said quickly, "If that's the case, they're probably fighting in the extreme prison secret realm now. They won't be able to return to the blood demon world anytime soon." Lin Sun was stunned and fell in a deep thought. According to his understanding, after the extreme prison secret realm descended, only the peerless figures of the longevity 9 tribulation realm were qualified to enter. After a month, the extreme prison secret realm would disappear from the 9 regions battlefield once again. So you're saying that the core figures of the blood demon world, including Xuechingi, aren't in the city of Tao Protectors? Ruo Wu's eyes lit up. If that's the case, the danger we'll encounter will be greatly reduced, even if we kill our way into the city of Tao Protectors. Lin Sun couldn't help but chuckle when he saw how excited she was. Aren't you boosting the morale of others and belittling your own? Ruo Wu smiled and said, "This is called assessing the situation, using all my strength and acting within my capabilities." Master, are we really going to kill our way into the enemy's lair? Silver asked excitedly. Lin Sun nodded and said, "The only pity is that Xue Qingyi isn't here. Otherwise, it would be even better if we could seize this opportunity to kill her." When he spoke up to this point, he instructed, "Silver, help me gather some information about the city of Tao Protectors along the way. Only by knowing yourself and your enemy can you win 100 battles." Silver smiled. "I've obtained some information from that old geezer's soul just now." As he spoke, he told Ruo Wu everything he knew. The city of Tao Protectors was located in the extreme north of the Blood Demon world, and it covered an area of 3,800 kilometers. It was the headquarters of the Blood Demon Ancient Territory's powerhouses, and the forces of the various forces of the Blood Demon Ancient Territory gathered here. There were countless powerhouses here, and there was no lack of true saints and peak true saints. There were around 800,000 powerhouses from the Blood Demon Ancient Territory participating in the 9 regions battlefield, and most of them were powerhouses who hadn't become saints. However, there were also a large number of peak true saints and peak true saints. Usually, there weren't many powerhouses gathered in the city of Tao Protectors. These 800,000 powerhouses were stationed in different areas of the Blood Demon world to prevent enemies from invading this place. There were around 100,000 powerhouses who stayed behind to guard the city of Tao Protectors. However, almost all of them were the elites of the Blood Demon Ancient Territory. Moreover, there were a group of peak true saints in the city of Tao Protectors all year round. Just this force alone was terrifying. Half a month ago, Xue Qingyi had left with a group of peerless figures, and she'd taken a group of peak saints with her as well. This meant that the strength of the city of Tao Protectors had decreased sharply during this period of time. Of course, it was the headquarters of the Blood Demon Ancient Territory after all, and the power gathered there was absolutely beyond imagination. Knowing this didn't dispel Lin Sun's intention to kill his way there, and he was about to take action. "Are you going to kill your way there?" Ruo Wu couldn't help but ask. "So what if I kill my way there?" Lin Sun's voice was calm, but there was an unconcealable disdain in it. His eyes were like lightning. "This time, I'm going to teach those bastards from the Blood Demon Ancient Territory an unforgettable lesson. Let me tell you about tomorrow's explosive update schedule. There will be 3 updates at around 10 a.m. and 3 updates before 6 p.m. I'll inform you one by one when the time comes." Chapter 1544. "All right, I'll go with you." Ruo Wu took a deep breath, and her eyes flashed with determination. It was a crazy decision. If it were someone else, she wouldn't take the risk. But Lin Sun was different. In the 9-region battlefield, everyone knew that the forces of the other 8 regions had an absolute advantage. Not only did they have many strong cultivators, but they also had many powerful forces. Moreover, there was no lack of geniuses, goddesses, and saints among them. Most importantly, there were peerless sages. This was something that the ancient Desolation realm couldn't compare with. It had only been a few months since the opening of the 9-territory battlefield, but countless experts from the ancient Desolation realm had been killed in the Blood Demon realm. Why? In the end, it was because of the huge gap in strength. But Ruo Wu also knew that in the 9-region battlefield, the true sage was the supreme power, restricted by the rules of heaven and earth. Lin Sun was now an outstanding figure among the peerless sages, and he even had the aura of invincibility. As long as he was there, the ancient Desolation realm would have the hope to reverse the situation in the cruel and bloody 9-region battlefield and wash away their shame. Perhaps Lin Sun's decision to kill his way to the Blood Demon Ancient region was crazy. But if one thought about it calmly, how many people in the Blood Demon realm could suppress Lin Sun with his current power? Let's go. Without further delay, the group set off. When they were first moved to the Blood Demon realm, Lin Sun learned that the city of Tao Protectors was located in the north of the God Refining Forest. In the Boundless World, a group of Blood Demon ancient region experts were patrolling, looking for prey. It's been almost 3 months since Lord Shui Qingyi gave the order. All the two-legged sheep found in the Blood Demon realm have been captured and killed. Yeah, it's hard to find a two-legged sheep woman to play with now. Hee, I heard that some Saint Realm women of the ancient Desolation realm have been secretly sent to the city of Tao Protectors to be played with by those great figures. That feeling. TSK. The experts of the ancient Desolation realm were talking to each other. Hey, look, someone suddenly pointed at the sky. Everyone raised their heads and saw beams of divine light streaking across the sky. This is a distress signal. But why were there so many of them? What exactly happened in the Refining God Forest? Everyone was astonished. This was the territory of the Blood Demon ancient region, yet there were so many requests for help. Something big must have happened. It didn't take long for them to learn from the request for help. 7 sounds of sages falling resounded. It seems that Lord Lei Shui and the other 6 peerless sages are in trouble. Lin Sun and Ruo Wu from the ancient Desolation region, who were ordered to be killed by Lord Qingyi, have come out of the God Refining Forest. When these experts understood this, they felt a chill run down their spines. Recently, even in the Blood Demon Circle, the names of Lin Sun and Ruo Wu spread rapidly, because one of them was the leader of the peerless experts in the ancient Desolation realm, and the other was a terrifying being who had stepped into the peerless saint realm. It could be said that this couple was the core of the ancient Desolation realm. In order to kill these 2 people, the Blood Devil world had mobilized an unknown number of forces over the past few months to cooperate with the actions of Lei Shui and the other 6 sages. This had caused a huge uproar. No one thought that this couple would have a chance to survive. But now such shocking news had spread. How? How is this possible? The experts' expressions kept changing. They could not believe it. At the same time, the experts of the Blood Demon ancient region who were scattered in different areas of the Blood Devil world also sensed the request for help turning into rays of light that flashed in the sky. Lord Lei Shui and the others are in trouble? That's impossible. That B***starred couple came out of the God Refining Forest alive? That must be fake news, right? Quick, send people to investigate. For a moment, countless voices of shock and astonishment were heard. The entire Blood Devil world was in an uproar. In the city of Tao Protectors, in the middle of the magnificent city built from blood and skeletons, stood a tall building that was 1,800 zhang tall. The tower was built with piles of white bones. It looked extremely ferocious. It was called the Victory Tower, which meant victory in battle. At the same time, this was the core area that only Qing Yi and the big shots of the Blood Demon ancient region had the right to enter. 6th Elder, something big has happened. A hurried voice resounded outside the Great Hall on the 9th floor of the Victory Tower. What is it? The 6th Elder of the Khanate Demon Sect, by Jian Xiong, who was meditating in the hall, frowned and opened his eyes that were filled with vicissitudes. Outside the hall stood a saint from the black-marked demonic hornet tribe. He looked worried. There are many requests for help coming from the God Refining Forest. The news says that Lord Lei Shui and the others. The saint spoke quickly and reported the news one by one. Bai Jianxiong's face was filled with shock. He suddenly stood up and said, 7 peerless saints are in trouble? How is that possible? No matter how powerful Ruo Wu is, didn't she almost die from being hunted down? The saint also had a bitter expression. If it was just one piece of news, it might not be worth believing. However, there are so many pieces of news saying the same thing. I'm afraid it can't be fake. Bai Jianxiong's eyes flickered as he fell into deep thought. Half a month ago, Shui Qingyi led a group of peerless figures and left the Blood Demon world under the protection of many peerless saints. Before he left, he gave an order that he must kill Ruo Wu and Lin Sun before he returned from the ultimate prison secret realm. He thought that with Lei Shui and the other peerless saints, as well as the cooperation of the entire Blood Demon world, killing the man and woman would be a piece of cake. Who would have thought that such a huge change would happen? Sixth Elder, you are in charge of the blood demon world now. Why don't you make a decision soon? The saint said anxiously. Oomph. What are you panicking about? They are just a pair of sheep. Even if they came out of the god-refining forest, what can they do? Bai Jinxiong snorted. His expression was filled with pride. This is the blood demon world, our territory. It is just a small accident. Do you think they can make us panic? As he finished speaking, he took a deep breath and said, Pass down my orders. Tell the experts of the various powers throughout the blood devil dimension to capture this pair of man and woman with all their might. No matter what, they absolutely can't be allowed to escape from the blood devil dimension. His words were sonorous and filled with murderous intent. Yes, the expert of the black-striped Devilby branch received the order and left. Lei Shui and the others are really in trouble. In the hall, Bai Jinxiong fell into deep thought. From the beginning to the end, he never thought that Lin Sun and the others would dare to attack the city of Dao Protectors. He subconsciously thought that since Lin Sun and the others had escaped, they would definitely choose to escape the blood demon world at the first opportunity. The reason was very simple. The city of Dao Protectors was the headquarters of the blood demon ancient region. Although Xue Qingyi had taken a group of peerless figures and many peerless saints with him when he left, there were still nearly 30 peerless saints left in the city of Dao Protectors. Apart from that, there were a large number of saints and tens of thousands of longevity tribulation monarchs. Under such circumstances, who would be foolish enough to come here and throw away their lives? Moreover, there were many armies belonging to the blood demon ancient region stationed at the borders of the different regions of the blood demon world. There were also many peerless saints in those regions. It could be said that in the blood demon world, Bai Jinxiong did not think that there would be any enemy in the 9 regions battlefield who would dare to run wild in their territory. What Bai Jinxiong was thinking about now was whether Lei Shui and the others were dead or not. If they were really dead, how did they die? This was a very important question. After all, the death of 7 peerless saints was still a considerable blow to the blood demon ancient region, even though it was not enough to seriously damage the blood demon ancient region. It should be known that after the ancient desolation domain was eradicated, the other 8 domains, including the blood demon ancient region, would also undergo a bloody and cruel war. At that time, it would be a battle of strength and resources. Now, the 9 regions battlefield had only been open for less than half a year, and 7 peerless saints of the blood demon ancient region had already fallen. This was not a good sign. As Bai Jinxiong was thinking about this question, she also subconsciously separated the deaths of Lei Shui and the others from Lin Sun and Ruo Wu. This was because, in his opinion, no matter how powerful the couple was, it was impossible for them to do this. Moreover, the news that he had just received was too brief. It was impossible for him to think that Lin Sun, whom he had overlooked, had already become a saint. But soon, the black-patterned demonic bee branch saint who had left to carry out the order hurriedly returned. This time, his expression was very strange, as if he wanted to say something. Why are you back again? Bai Jinxiong frowned. There's news from the front lines. They say. The saint's expression became even more strange. What did they say? Bai Jinxiong was very displeased. How could a dignified saint be so hesitant? It was simply unbecoming of him. The saint took a deep breath and said, According to the news, Lin Sun and Ruo Wu are together and are killing their way to the city of Dao Protectors. Bai Jinxiong's expression immediately became incomparably strange. Then she sneered. Have they lost their minds? Or are they out of their minds? The saint was also very puzzled. He smiled and said, Perhaps they really have lost their minds. Bai Jinxiong thought about it and said with a roused spirit, That's not bad. I was just worried that they would escape at the first opportunity. Now that they have come to us, let's take this opportunity to send them on their way. The saint nodded. I think so too. However, that Ruo Wu is a peerless saint. Should we make some preparations in advance? Bai Jinxiong nodded and said, Pass down my order. Have the Flying Kite Tribe and the Golden Demonic Snake Branch Saints take action. Tell them that the deaths of Lei Shui and Shi Taixing are related to this couple. Now, I will give them a chance to take revenge with their own hands. Chapter 1545. Just as they set off from the god-refining forest, Lin Sun and the others met a group of blood demon ancient region experts. Looking at how aggressive they were, it was obvious that they had received the distress signal and rushed to the cultivating god forest to help. Lin Sun didn't need to do anything at all. Ruo Wu, Little Silver, and the sky-splitting demonic butterfly moved together and wiped out the enemies in a flash. All of this happened in a flash. However, as Lin Sun and the others moved forward, they encountered more and more blood demon ancient region experts along the way. They formed groups and whistled over from all directions. If they went at full speed, no one could stop them. But Lin didn't. This time, since he intended to kill his way to the city of Dao Protectors, he naturally wished for nothing more than to encounter as many enemies as possible. For a time, batches of blood demon ancient region powerhouses were killed on Lin Sun's path. Every time, there would be dozens or even hundreds of enemies killed. However, there were very few opportunities for Lin Sun to make a move, because the strongest of these enemies were just ordinary true saints. In the eyes of a peerless saint like Ruo Wu, it was not even worth mentioning. In this way, Lin Sun became an idler. He even had the time to check his flying immortal token and ancient desolation token, thinking about how to obtain them in his future cultivation. In this way, they embarked on a bloody journey all the way to the north. Such a massacre couldn't be concealed at all. Soon, the news about Lin Sun's expedition to the north spread among the black-striped magic wasps. Originally, there were still many strong practitioners of the blood demon ancient region who didn't know what was going on. They rushed to Lin Sun and the others aggressively. But as the news spread, many experts of the blood demon ancient region felt that something was wrong when they learned the number of experts who had been killed by Lin Sun and his team along the way. With a peerless saint leading the way, they swept through everything in their path as if they were invincible. So who would dare to charge forward and give their lives away? Dozens of groups of blood demon ancient realm powerhouses had lost their lives. There were thousands of them in total, and many of them were sage-level powerhouses. The bloody number of casualties also began to spread along with the spread of the news, causing countless people to be shocked and shocked. This is our territory, yet that adulterous couple is committing a massacre here. Are they treating our blood demon ancient realm as if there's no one here? Since when did the two-legged sheep of the ancient desolation realm dare to bully us? So people were angry. Quick, ask for reinforcement from the city of Dao Protectors. We won't be able to stop them without the help of a peak saint. There were also people who were burning with anxiety and sent out a request for help. They're heading to the city of Dao Protectors? Aren't they afraid of death? Some were surprised and bewildered. They noticed that Lin Sun and the others were actually heading towards the city of Dao Protectors in the north. In this bloody storm, Lin Sun and the others moved forward without any pause. In less than a quarter of an hour, they had already killed 10,000 Li in a valley. From the looks of it, the ancient desolation realm has some tough guys this time. A tall, silver-haired man with a fiery red tattoo on his arm said. There was a faint golden fluctuation of the saint realm around him. Eastern Mulberry Ancient Region, the Scarlet Viper Clan saint, Yin Xingwen. Beside Yin Xingwen were more than 10 experts from the Eastern Mulberry Ancient Region. The Eastern Mulberry Ancient Region was one of the 8 regions. Before the Ancient Desolation Region was completely wiped out, the experts of the other 8 regions would not fight against each other. This was a rule that had long been agreed upon. The reason why Yin Xingwen and the others appeared in the Blood Demon realm was the same as Lin Sun and the others. They'd been teleported here when they entered the 9 regions battlefield. This man and woman named Lin Sun and Ruo Wu are really tough. They've killed their way through like a hot knife through butter. This time, the Blood Demon realm has suffered some heavy losses. Some people laughed. No, you don't understand. These losses are not heavy at all. They can't even scratch the surface of the Blood Demon Ancient Region's camp. Yin Xingwen said indifferently. You must remember that the real deciding factor of the Nine Regions battle is never those small fries, but the peak saints. Then, he changed the topic and made a judgment. As for Lin Sun and Ruo Wu, they're destined to die this time. It's a pity that the ancient Desolation realm has finally produced one or two outstanding figures, but they're going to fall like comets in the Blood Demon realm. Hearing this, the experts of the Eastern Mulberry Ancient region laughed disapprovingly. Ancient Desolation realm? The Ancient Desolation realm had never been a part of the Nine Regions battle. Speaking ill of others behind their backs, aren't you afraid of retribution? Suddenly, a figure appeared out of thin air. He was dressed in moon-white clothes and had a calm expression. It was Lin's son. Yan Xingwen was shocked, and his expression changed abruptly. Friend, we're from the Eastern Mulberry Ancient region. We're not with the Blood Demon Ancient region. With just a glance, Lin Sun gave him a terrifying feeling of oppression. He had an illusion that his mind was about to collapse. Therefore, he did not hesitate to lower his stance. Moreover, he had roughly judged that the young man in front of him was undoubtedly the top figure in the ancient Desolation realm called Lin Sun. However, the others did not have such discerning eyes. Seeing that Lin Sun's attitude was not right, someone immediately frowned and said with an unfriendly expression, "Were you eavesdropping on us just now?" Yan Xingwen cursed inwardly. However, when he wanted to stop him, it was already too late. Bang! The person who spoke died on the spot. His body went limp on the ground. He did not even see clearly how Lin Sun attacked before he died. You dare to attack? The others were furious. Seeing this, Yan Xingwen sighed in his heart. He knew that there was no way to explain, so he immediately attacked first. Boom! He waved his right arm, and a terrifying fiery glow surged out, covering the sky and covering the earth. However, when it reached Lin Sun, it instantly collapsed and was extinguished. You've actually become a martial sage? At this moment, Yan Xingwen finally realized what the problem was. It turned out that it was not only Ruo Wu, but even Lin Sun had become a martial sage. So what if you're from the Eastern Mulberry Ancient region? To me, you're all the same as those beasts in the Blood Demon Ancient region. You're all enemies that I must kill. After speaking, Lin Sun turned around and left. Behind him, Yan Xingwen's body exploded and was obliterated by the terrifying Taoist light. Then, the experts from the Eastern Mulberry Ancient region died on the spot. No one was spared. Along the way, Lin Sun saw many experts from other regions like Yan Xingwen's group. Without exception, they were all killed. For example, the Great Luo Ancient region, the Northern Underworld Ancient region, the Extreme Ancient region, the Starfiend Ancient region, the Julie Ancient region, and the Heaven Fire Ancient region. He could not just watch the show. To Lin Sun, he represented the ancient desolation. The experts from the other 8 regions were all enemies. In the past, Lin Sun would pay back how the experts from the other 8 regions had treated the experts from the ancient desolation. Killing Yan Xingwen's group was just a small interlude for Lin Sun. Not long after, he met up with Ruo Wu and continued to move forward. Along the way, they had no intention of hiding anything. They killed their way forward and set off a storm of blood along the way. At this moment, in a rolling snow-capped mountain thousands of miles away from the city of Dao Protectors, 3 peerless sages who had received orders from the city of Dao Protectors were already waiting there. I heard that even Lei Shuexiu and the other 7 peerless sages failed to kill that woman called Ruo Wu. This woman can't be underestimated. An old woman with a shiny golden body covered in dense golden scales spoke with a sharp voice. Shi Biyun, a peerless sage of the golden demon snake bloodline. No matter how powerful she is, she shouldn't be so stupid as to seek death. I can only say that she's crazy. She's clearly trying to imitate them. A thin and elegant man in a gray robe next to her said indifferently. His scarlet eyes flickered with a demonic luster. Lei Tianheng, a peerless sage of the Flying Iris Demon tribe, Lei Shuexiu's uncle, and a late true sage. Apart from him, there was also a man with unkempt hair and skin that was covered in beast skin. He sat cross-legged on the ground with a cold expression and did not say a word. He Qingyan, a peerless figure of the golden-winged dragon crane bloodline, and He Qinghuai's elder brother. He chose to act as soon as he learned of He Qinghuai's death. Tell me, how did Lei Shuexiu and the others die? Could they have been killed by Ruo Wu? Shibiyun could not help but ask. Nonsense. The depths of the divine refining forest are filled with danger, and there have been cases of sages dying in the past. Moreover, how could Ruo Wu possibly be a match for 7 peerless sages? Don't forget that Ruo Wu was almost killed before. Lei Tianheng's face was very gloomy. Lei Shuexiu's death made him feel extremely distressed. While they were talking, news came from afar from time to time. Oh no, Lin Sun and Ruo Wu have appeared in the Blood Wolf Mountain. The 19 sages stationed there have all been killed. The enemy has appeared 3,000 miles away. The enemy is approaching this way. Not long after, as the news came, Lei Tianheng and Shibiyun both stopped talking and looked into the distance. There was an uncontrollable killing intent in the depths of their hearts. The originally pervasive wind and snow were dispersed by the terrifying killing intent, and the void was filled with the whimpering sound of the wind, which was mournful like the wailing of ghosts and the howling of wolves. They're coming. Suddenly, a cold light flashed across Lei Tianheng's scarlet eyes, and his divine sense spread out in all directions. A moth flying into the fire is equivalent to playing with fire and getting burned. I have to say, this woman is really stupid, Shibiyun said expressionlessly. Quietly, He Qingyan, who was originally meditating, also stood up from the ground. His rock-like body was several meters high, like a mountain rising from the ground, giving people a sense of endless oppression. His eyes were full of indifference as he looked into the distance. I want her to die. He Qingyan gently spat out 4 words, each of which was full of dense killing intent. Of course, if the 3 of us go together, how can this stupid woman have a chance to survive? Shibiyun said leisurely. From beginning to end, the 3 of them were talking about how to kill Ruo Wu, and they never thought about Lin Sun, who was beside Ruo Wu. Because until now, they still didn't know that Lin Sun had become a sage. On the contrary, Ruo Wu was listed as a key figure. Even Little Silver and Sky-Splitting Butterfly were valued more than Lin Sun. Chapter 1546. The city of Tao Protectors was 1,000 miles away from the snowy mountains. The 6th elder of the Khanate Demon sect, Bai Jinxiong, stood on the towering city wall with her hands behind her back and looked into the distance. 1,000 miles was more than enough for her to sense the general situation with her divine sense as a peerless saint. She's just a woman, but she dares to follow the actions of a moth to a flame and set off a trail of blood. Should I call her stupid or commendable? Bai Jinxiong murmured. There were a few other saints next to her, and they couldn't help but sneer. They were all stunned when they heard that the woman called Ruo Wu didn't escape from the blood demon world immediately after escaping from the godly refining forest. Instead, she headed straight for the city of Tao Protectors. How could there be someone so unafraid of death in this world? After all, this was their base camp, and there were dozens of peerless saints guarding this place. Who gave her the courage to come here to die? A peerless saint can't be a fool. Her actions can only mean one thing. She really doesn't want to live anymore. Someone mocked and ridiculed him. She needs a reason. I think it's best to capture her alive and interrogate her to find out why she doesn't want to live anymore. Someone's eyes flashed with a strange light. It was a saint who looked like a handsome young man. He held a jade fan with gold in his hand and wore a luxurious robe. Liu. He was a saint of the Silver Goblin race, one of the top 10 races in the Blood Demon Ancient region. Everyone had a strange look on their faces when they heard him. Everyone knew that even though Liu was a saint, he was a lustful person because he pursued the path of plucking and nourishing. It wasn't because of lust, but because he used the yin-yang plucking technique as his own path. Liu was definitely not an ordinary pervert. However, it was true that Liu liked to collect beauties for himself. Clearly, he had his eyes on Ruo Wu. Everyone, please don't misunderstand. Even though I have tender feelings for the fairer sex, I have the awareness to destroy my enemies. Liu said with a smile. As they were conversing, Bai Jianxiong's eyes suddenly flashed with a divine light. They're here. Almost at the same time, the other peerless sages, standing on top of the city walls, all extended their divine senses. Wind and snow filled the air, and the mountain range stretched endlessly. Lu Tianheng, Shi Biyun, and He Qingyin each stood at a corner, forming a triangular formation. They were like three barriers that lay across the heavens and the earth, and they possessed the aura of being impossible to break through. A formless, murderous aura spread out in all directions like a tide. Heaven and earth were silent, and all living things were murderous. When a saint was enraged, there would be millions of corpses and rivers of blood. At this moment, Lu Tianheng was overseeing this place, and just the aura emanating from his body was enough to annihilate anyone below the saint stage. In the distance, Lin Sun's figure appeared. Dressed in a moon-white robe, with his hands behind his back, he walked in the wind and snow as if he were taking a stroll in a courtyard. Lu Tianheng and others were stunned. They thought that Ruo Wu would appear at the first time, but Lin Sun showed up first. Why did this kid come out first? On the tower of the city of Dao protectors, Bai Jianxiong and the other saints frowned. Before, all their analysis was based on how to kill Ruo Wu, so they directly ignored Lin Sun. But it just so happened that this person that they had overlooked was the first to appear. Of course, this was just a small accident. Very soon, their attention was attracted by Ruo Wu, who had appeared right after Lin Sun. She was dressed in a red robe, and her figure was graceful and slender. As she walked in the white wind and snow, her black hair fluttered in the wind, and her beautiful face was suffused with a holy luster. She looked like a fairy that had descended to the mortal world. So beautiful. Lai Yu's eyes lit up, and a strange look appeared on his face. He licked the corner of his lips and said, "No matter what, don't kill her. Such a beauty is top-notch, and it's hard to come by." The others could not help but laugh. However, Bai Jianxiong frowned slightly. She could keenly sense that Ruo Wu's expression was calm and composed. She did not look like a foolish person that would fly into a flame. Could it be that she had something to rely on since she dared to come? Bai Jianxiong shook her head dumbfoundedly. This area of 1,000 miles was the base camp of the Blood Demon Ancient Region. Even if the other party had something to rely on, it was no different from hitting a rock with an egg. At the same time, the gazes of Lu Tianheng and the other two saints shifted from Lin Sun to Ruo Wu. This woman was worthy of their attention, and they must kill her. The atmosphere between heaven and earth became more and more oppressive. Even the whimpering sound of the wind, which was like the wailing of ghosts and the howling of wolves, became still. Ruo Wu was stunned. She felt that three murderous intents were firmly locked on her, and Lin Sun had become a character that no one cared about. She could not help but smile and transmit her voice. It seems that they still don't know the fact that you have become a saint, and they still don't believe that Lu Tianheng and the others were actually killed by you. Lin Sun, who was walking in front, said casually, "Isn't this better? We have traveled about 29,000 miles along the way. Along the way, you, Silver, and Tian kept killing each other, so I didn't have much chance to fight. Now it's my turn to fight." Ruo Wu raised the corner of her mouth. "Make it quick?" Lin Sun said, "There are some old guys watching the battle from 1,000 miles away. We should give them a surprise." Ruo Wu nodded. That's settled. While they were talking, they had arrived at the top of a snow-capped mountain. The mountain where Lu Tianheng and the others were standing was thousands of meters away. When they looked at each other, a terrible collision of qi, like a thunderclap, resounded in this deathly, silent atmosphere. For a time, the world trembled, the mountains shook, and the heavy snow collapsed like a waterfall, turning into a torrent and sweeping down. Boom! Almost at the same time, Ruo Wu's figure flashed, and she took the lead. Her red dress fluttered, like a vermilion bird flying under the sky. She flicked her sleeves. Endless divine flames, like a great river, spread out, smelted the void, and burned mountains and snow. Do it! With a thunderous roar, Lu Tianheng, Shi Biyun, and He Qingyin also attacked. Each of them had monstrous power, blooming with monstrous holy power. Clang! A long and narrow blood-red saber was chopped out by Lu Tianheng. The world, mountains and rivers were suddenly cut open like a canvas. Buzz, Shiba Yun spat out a colorful flying sword from her lips. It was graceful and magnificent, with a peerlessly sharp edge, and it rushed out violently. Boom! He Qingyin's attack was the most overbearing and ferocious. His 10 m tall body burned with golden divine radiance, and he took a step forward, causing the void to collapse and yin and yang to reverse. He waved his right arm and punched out. The power that burst out from this punch caused the heavens and the earth to tremble, and a muffled rumble sounded like a drum being beaten by a deity. Without any nonsense, the battle broke out at the instant they faced each other. Good. Someone on the wall of the city of Dao protectors applauded and praised. Bai Jinxiong nodded secretly as well. In a battle between saints, it was fine if they didn't attack, but when they attacked, it would definitely be as powerful as a thunderbolt. The performance of Lu Tianheng and the others was really outstanding. Boom! In the blink of an eye, Ruo Wu was besieged by 3 peerless saints on the battlefield, and the nearby mountains collapsed, exploded, and were flattened by the terrifying divine radiance. All the gazes were fixed on Ruo Wu, and all of them revealed ghastly and cold expressions. If nothing unexpected happened, the outcome was decided. But Lin Sun raised his face in this place where no one paid any attention to him. There was a flash of killing intent in his cold black eyes. The terrifying aura on his body that was concealed by the Baiyan Qi suddenly erupted like a volcano that had been suppressed for 100,000 years. Boom! The blazing light of the Tao broke through the clouds in the sky, illuminating the mountains and rivers. In the battle, the expressions of Lu Tianheng and the others changed slightly, and they subconsciously separated a strand of their divine senses to look. This, on the wall, Bai Jinxiong and the other peerless saints were also shocked, and they shifted their attention to the place where the blazing light of the Tao came from. At this moment, Lin Sun had already made his move. His black hair fluttered, and his body was covered in dazzling light. He was like a sun that had rushed out of the abyss, and his disdainful power swept across the entire battlefield. With one step, the surroundings were thrown into chaos, and the world seemed to be turned upside down. Oh no! The expressions of Lu Tianheng and the others changed again, and they realized that they had made a mistake. Previously, they had all treated Ruo Wu as their top target, and they had ignored Lin Sun, thinking that he hadn't become a saint yet. But now, they knew that this young man had already become a saint. No wonder he is so fearless. On the wall, Bai Jinxiong's clothes were fluttering, and her eyes were frightening. She suddenly understood why Ruo Wu dared to kill all the way here. It turned out that Lin Sun was her backer. Beside Bai Jinxiong, a group of peerless saints was also stunned, and they felt unprepared. Without entering the secret realm of prison and fighting for the opportunity to become a saint, the young man who was like an ant actually became a saint? How could this be possible? This accident happened so suddenly that they were all in a daze. On the battlefield, Ruo Wu's eyes were filled with extraordinary splendor. The real killing will begin from now on. After the initial shock, Lu Tianheng and the others had all recovered. As peerless saints, they had rich fighting experience, and their state of mind was far more stable than ordinary people. The reason why they were surprised before was nothing more than that they sensed that Lin Sun had become a saint. It would be a big mistake if they thought that this could catch them unprepared. At this time, Lin Sun had already made his move. Boom! As soon as Lin Sun made his move, he moved time and space like a swift and violent streamer, incredibly fast. Swish! 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 3,000 Taishian sword chi came out of Lin Sun's body and evolved into a sword formation, covering Lu Tianheng. In Lin Sun's hand, the wordless pagoda had already emerged, and under his control, it broke out at the same time. Since he had decided to give his opponent a surprise, how could Lin Sun hold back? The battlefield suddenly became chaotic, and the sword formation swept across, dense and pervasive, crisscrossing and incomparably fierce. No! Lu Tianheng's expression suddenly changed greatly, and he shuddered with fear while his soul almost left his body. The might of Lin Sun's strike actually caused him to feel suffocated. Obviously, Lin Sun was not an ordinary peerless saint. Thinking of this, Lu Tianheng felt cold all over. Chapter 1547. Lu Tianheng didn't have the time to think, and he waved his saber and attacked with all his might. Bang! 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 Dense, dazzling, and sharp sword chi descended. Every single sword strike possessed the might to annihilate ghosts and gods, and it shook Lu Tianheng to the point his vital energy and blood surged while blood sprayed from his mouth and nose. What sword chi is this? Why is it so terrifying? Lu Tianheng was astounded. In merely an instant, he'd blocked thousands of sword strikes, but he'd been heavily injured. The most terrifying thing was that there were still dense amounts of sword chi whistling over from all directions. Open! He was furious, and his roar shook the heavens. Under the stimulation of death, he'd gone all out. Rumble! The interweaving sword screen was finally cut open, and the saber in Lu Tianheng's hand was riddled with holes. In the end, it couldn't withstand the attack and exploded into pieces. But before Lu Tianheng could react, a pagoda that seemed to be made of divine gold and iron that flowed with obscure characters had smashed over. Its aura possessed the might to crush the world and destroy mountains and rivers. No! Lu Tianheng's face went pale, yet he didn't have the time to dodge. Amidst a miserable and unwilling howl, his body was forcefully blasted into pieces, and his flesh and blood that transformed into powder were evaporated by the blazing glow of treasures. He attacked brazenly when no one was paying attention to him. In the blink of an eye, he'd killed a peak saint. All of a sudden, the surroundings fell silent. Shi Biyun and He Qingyan, who were fighting fiercely with Ruo Wu, stiffened, and their expressions changed drastically. They were so shocked that they almost cried out. Earlier, they'd overlooked Lin Sun. Who could have imagined that such an ant had not only become a peak saint in an instant, but his combat strength was also so terrifying? This, thousands of kilometers away, Bai Jinxiong and the others were horrified, and they opened their eyes wide. Lu Tianheng was an old monster of the Flying Kite Demon clan. His seniority was higher than Lu Tianheng, and his combat strength was first class among the peak saints. But in the blink of an eye, he'd been killed in the cruelest way. How could that little bastard be so strong? Someone was shocked. It should be Lu Tianheng who was caught off guard. Who would have thought that this little bastard would conceal his strength so deeply? Someone's expression was gloomy. Boom! On the battlefield, as soon as he annihilated Lu Tianheng, Lin Sun's figure didn't stop in the slightest, and he held the great Dao Tower as he charged toward Shi Biyun. His figure flowed with surging Taoist light, and his aura was like that of a fiend god. Every single move he made emitted an aura that oppressed the heavens. Shi Biyun's expression changed. She let out a shrill cry and attacked with all her might. Die! When this word came out of Lin Sun's mouth, a colorful flying sword Shi Biyun cast was smashed away with a bang. Following that, 3,000 Taishian sword chi came down and drowned Shi Biyun's body. The speed of the attack and the power of the attack shocked the world. Even Ruo Wu, who was also on the battlefield, could not help but feel shocked. She recalled that when Lin Sun fought with Lu, Shuexiu, and the other 6 top sages, Lin Sun just regarded them as a whetstone to practice and temper his own Tao and Dharma. This also meant that he had not used his full strength at that time. But now it was obviously different. In order to end the battle quickly, or to give the opponent a surprise, Lin Sun really showed his fangs at this time. Puff! Puff! As expected, Shi Biyun's body was minced by the endless sword chi, and her blood poured down like a waterfall. She didn't even have a chance to escape or resist until she died. In just a moment, another top sage was killed. His body was dismembered by the sword chi, and the rain of blood dyed the sky red. The second one, Lin Sun suddenly turned his head and locked his eyes on He Qingyan. At this time, He Qingyan, who was the most domineering and murderous, was determined to avenge his sister He Qinghuai. But now his body was cold, as if he had fallen into an ice cave. When he was stared at by Lin Sun, as a top sage, he couldn't help but shiver. "It's your turn." Boom! In the void, Lin Sun's figure disappeared out of thin air. He Qingyan's first thought was to escape. There was no way to resist such a peerless enemy. If he wanted to save his life, he could only escape. Unfortunately, Ruo Wu had been attacking all the time, which also played a role in restraining He Qingyan, making it impossible for him to escape. In such a situation, Lin Sun appeared in front of him out of thin air and began to kill. How is this possible? On top of the city wall thousands of miles away, the top sages were horrified. In less than 7 breaths, Lu Tianheng and Shi Biyun were killed one after another, killed by the other party's unstoppable killing intent. These were 2 top sages, the ancestors of their clans. In a 9 regions battlefield, they were like the rulers of the heavens. But now, he had been killed like a fragile Tao Wu. Who would dare to believe it? Say, do you think Lei Shuexiu and the other 6 were also killed by this kid? Someone suddenly asked. It was just a question, but it made by Jian Xiong and the others' expressions change. Previously, they had subconsciously thought that the death of Lu Shuexiu and the others had something to do with the strange and dangerous environment in the depths of the divine refining forest. After all, these were 7 peak stage sages who had chased after Ruo Wu and almost killed her. But after witnessing Lin Sun's battle strength, they all realized that if the deaths of Lu Shuexiu and the others were really related to Lin Sun, this was too terrifying. Oh no, He Qingyan is in a desperate situation. Why aren't you all going to save him? Bai Jianxiong's expression suddenly changed. Immediately, several top sages attacked without hesitation and moved through the void. To them, a distance of 1,000 miles was nothing more than a blink of an eye. But in the blink of an eye, Lin Sun held the Great Way bottomless pagoda and swung it down like a divine mountain. Boom! He Qingyan's body, which was dozens of feet tall, exploded. The blood that splashed out was evaporated in the void. At this moment, Lai Yu and the other 4 top sages had just arrived at the scene. If not for their sharp eyes and quick hands, they would have been splashed with blood. The third one, Lin Sun, spoke with a cold expression. His body flowed with Taoist light, and a pagoda floated above his head, radiating boundless light. He stood alone like a peerless war immortal. He had an otherworldly aura and a domineering might that could cover the sky. The expressions of Lai Yu and the others changed. Even now, they still found it hard to accept, killing 3 top sages in 10 breaths. Who would believe it if news of this got out? Who would dare to believe that such a feat came from a young man who had just become a sage not long ago? It was too unimaginable. Lu Shuexiu and the others were also killed by you. A yellow-haired old man in a golden robe asked with a gloomy face. That's right. Lin Sun nodded calmly. With his current strength, there was no need to hide anything. But Lai Yu and the others could not remain calm. It was actually true. Didn't this mean that including Lu Tianheng and the other 2, a total of 10 top sages have been killed by Lin Sun? Top sages were not cabbages. Even in the other 8 regions, there were only a few top sages among thousands of true sages. But in just one day, 10 top sages had been killed. This was too great a loss. They could ignore the experts of various races who were killed by Lin Sun and the others along the way, and they could also ignore the true sages who were killed by Lin Sun and the others. But they could not ignore the deaths of those top sages, because the real hegemony of the 9-region battlefield was dominated by true sages. In fact, Lai Yu and the others were wrong. Only 9 people died in Lin Sun's hands, and Song Xingkuan was killed by Ruo Wu. But these are no longer important. What was important was that Lai Yu and the others finally realized why Lin Sun and Ruo Wu dared to run amok and set off a bloody storm along the way, pointing the spearhead at their lair. The reason was Lin Sun. Are you surprised? Very surprised? Lin Sun's black eyes glanced at the top sages and said with a chuckle. But when Lai Yu and the others heard it, their faces darkened, and their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Their killing intent soared. Since when did their blood demon ancient region dare to be so ignored? Never. Little bastard, this is the blood demon world. Do you really think that you can ignore everything and do whatever you want with your own strength? An old monster said with a grim expression. This guy should be killed. The other person said resolutely. No, I want him to live a life worse than death. One after another, the top sages spoke with anger and hatred. The aura around them was surging, causing the universe to wail and the void to become chaotic. However, Lin Sun seemed to be unaware of it and said indifferently, 7 will die. 3 will still die. Do the 5 of you think that you can stay alive by blocking the front? His words were overflowing with overbearing aura. On the city tower thousands of miles away, Bai Jinxiong's expression changed slightly, and she shouted, "Come back!" But it was already a step too late. Chapter 1548. Boom! Just as his voice faded away, Lin Sun had already launched a brazen attack. 3,000 Taishian sword chi swept out of the acupoints all over his body and evolved into a sword formation. Clang! The broken blade flew through the air and emitted clear clanging sounds as it emitted monstrous killing intent. Above Lin Sun's head, the Tower of Endless Way was shining with dazzling golden light. Obscure and mysterious characters of Tao emerged on its surface. Both chi refining and body refining were exerted by Lin Sun in an instant. Compared to when he killed Lu Tianheng's group of 3, he was clearly completely different. He'd become even more terrifying, even more domineering, and even more horrifying. Let's go together. Liu shouted and waved the gold-painted jade fan in his hand. In the current situation, there was no time to retreat. Otherwise, he would be firmly locked by Lin Sun, lose the initiative, and fall into a passive position. Rumble. The battle erupted. In an instant, the world spun and the sun and moon lost their light. The rolling snow-capped mountains in the vicinity were swept away by the terrifying fluctuations and erased from the earth. An area of 500 kilometers in front of the city of Tao Protectors was visibly affected by the terrifying impact, and the ground had cracked open into numerous horrifying ravines. On the other hand, the dazzling glow of treasures flowed in the sky, while miraculous Tao arts poured down, and it gave rise to all sorts of extremely terrifying phenomena. The images of fiend gods appeared, lightning surged, sword howls surged like the tide, and blades flickered and fluttered about. At this moment, heaven and earth were shocked. This was a true ultimate sacred battle. How could such destructive power be ordinary? Meanwhile, even the countless experts of the Blood Devil ancient domain in the city of Tao Protectors were alarmed, and they charged into the sky to watch from afar. What happened? What? Who dares to cause trouble outside our city of Tao Protectors? It's a battle between 2 peerless sages. Who is it that has such audacity? Are you tired of living? Clamorous noise resounded throughout the city of Tao Protectors, and all of them were extremely surprised. In next to no time, they understood that the newcomer was Lin Sun, who Xue Qingyi had ordered to be killed. For a time, they felt even more disbelief. That guy actually became a peerless saint? Many people shuddered. This was simply inconceivable. Even someone as noble as Xue Qingyi and the other peerless figures had to go to the extreme prison secret realm to fight for the opportunity to become a saint. But Lin Sun actually became a peerless saint while he was trapped in the divine refining forest. This was undoubtedly too shocking. There were 3 sounds of saint death resounding through the sky. Could it be Lin Sun's doing? There were also many people who were astounded and bewildered. For a time, countless gazes in the city of Tao Protectors were focused on the battle in the distance. Damn it! Since when did the 2-legged sheep of the ancient desolation realm dare to show off in front of us? We must kill this evil creature and hang his corpse in front of the city as a warning to others. And that woman, we can't let her go. No matter who it is, anyone who dares to provoke us must die. Countless furious voices rang out. Every single person's face was filled with viciousness, gloominess, and ruthlessness that could not be concealed. In their hearts, the ancient Desolation Realm was a broken and barren land. The experts of the ancient Desolation Realm were even treated as livestock that could be slaughtered at will. But now a two-legged sheep had actually slaughtered its way into their lair. This caused all of them to feel humiliated. "Pass down my order. From now on, no one is allowed to leave the city without permission," Bai Jinxiong said in a deep voice. Then he turned his gaze to the battlefield. An indescribable sense of humiliation surged in his heart. The experts of the ancient Desolation Realm that they despised the most had come to their lair. This had never happened in the past battles of the 9 regions. Summon the peerless saints of the various clans. Gather with me. Prepare to kill the enemy. Bai Jinxiong took a deep breath and gave another order. He gritted his teeth. This time I'll kill both of them. Think about it. If they couldn't make them stay today, how would Xue Qingyi and the others feel when they returned? When the news of this battle reached the ears of the experts of the other realms, how would they view the blood demon ancient realm? Boom! 5 destructive auras filled the battlefield. Saint treasures soared into the sky, and divine splendor covered the world. Boundless waves were released. Taoist techniques flew across the sky and disrupted the 5 elements. Murderous auras soared into the sky. There were thunderous sounds and electric arcs that were like dragons. The power of the 5 peerless saints joining forces was enough to overturn the world and destroy the mountains and rivers. If this happened in the outside world, a huge city would be wiped out in an instant. The scene of destruction was absolutely terrifying beyond imagination. But the current Lin Sun was no longer the same as before. Under such a siege, his expression was calm. Only his murderous aura was boiling, and his combat strength was unparalleled. Break! Around him, star obliteration swallowed the sky and turned into an unparalleled abyss, like the Milky Way hanging upside down. No matter what kind of amazing saint treasures or supreme Taoist techniques they had, they were like bubbles in front of Lin's sun. They were all engulfed and annihilated. Boom! The expressions of the 5 peerless saints changed. The momentum of their siege was violently broken by a terrifying and irresistible force. They couldn't help but stagger back. On the other hand, everything in the surroundings of Lin Sun was transformed into nothingness. Hiss! It wasn't just the experts in the city of Dao that were shocked by Lin Sun's arrogant attitude. Even Bai Jinxiong was shocked. Her expression changed while her body stiffened, and she gasped without end. Is he still a human? Some people shrieked with voices filled with horror. How could he be so strong? Even some experienced and knowledgeable old freaks that had lived for countless years couldn't help but tremble fiercely in their hearts. Lin Sun had just stepped foot into the peerless saint realm, yet he possessed invincible might. This simply shattered their previous understanding, and they didn't dare believe their eyes. Ruo Wu had retreated to the outside of the battlefield and was waiting for Lin Sun. It wasn't that she couldn't interfere, but she was worried that she would become a burden to Lin Sun. No one knew better than her that even the 7 peerless saints couldn't do anything to Lin Sun, let alone these 5 people. It was bound to be futile. Kill! A gray-robed old man with thick hair and a thick beard picked up a giant thunderbolt hammer and smashed it towards Lin Sun. Rumble! The terrifying purple thunderbolt was like a raging waterfall, filled with the dense power of the Law of Saints. It poured down in torrents. Clang! Lin Sun stretched out his finger and blocked the astonishing purple thunderbolt hammer. This was an unparalleled saint treasure that could easily smash mountains, rivers, lakes, and seas. But in the face of Lin Sun's finger, it was like a natural moat and couldn't move an inch. The gray-robed old man's face turned red. He tried his best to activate the hammer, but it was still in vain. Instead, Lin Sun grabbed the purple thunderbolt hammer with his fingers and fiercely smashed it back. When the purple thunderbolt hammer was smashed in Lin Sun's hand, its power suddenly skyrocketed. With a bang, the gray-robed old man was sent flying backward while coughing up blood. At the same time, the other 4 peerless saints had already attacked. This kind of siege was really amazing. Each of them had the power to cover the sky and earth, and they attacked together. It was almost impossible to resist. But Lin Sun seemed unruffled, and his expression was calm and indifferent. He gently raised his hand and suddenly held the tower of Endless Tao in his hand. He clasped his fingers and turned them into a fist, and then punched it in the air. Boom! At the center of his palm, the pagoda emanated a blazing and dazzling golden glow of the Tao, and then terrifying energy surged into his fist. In the end, it transformed into a dazzling and blazing beam of light that revealed an all-powerful and terrifying might that could crush the world. It seemed that there was no way to stop this fist. In an instant, the mountains and rivers here were shattered, and all things were destroyed. The joint attack of the 5 peerless saints was blasted again. They retreated and dodged as if they were struck by lightning. Lin Sun's unstoppable fist force had already approached the gray-robed old man. Bang! The gray-robed old man roared and tried his best to resist, but it was no different from a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Swept by the fist force, his body exploded in an instant, and blood rained down. Even his divine soul was destroyed by the blazing torrent of fist force. One punch shook the 5 peerless saints and killed the gray-robed old man. The invincible and domineering power made all the spectators in the city of Tao dumbfounded. They were so shocked that their eyeballs almost fell out. The 4th one, Lin Sun said indifferently. When he spoke, he had already taken a step in the air, and with a flash he attacked the other opponents. In the sky, the dazzling blood light was rolling, and the mourning sound of saints falling drifted. The remaining 4 peerless saints were shocked, angry, and frightened. But at this time, they had no choice but to resist with all their strength. Behind them was their lair, and an unknown number of gazes were currently focused on them. How could they retreat? Once they retreated, they were doomed to be unable to raise their heads for the rest of their lives. Dazzling divine light, 8 desolations, soul, slaying cut, yin-yang cut, all kinds of magical methods, magical powers, and treasures poured out and bombarded Lin Sun. But no matter what kind of attack they launched, they were all easily defeated by Lin Sun. His figure was flowing with the light of Tao, and he was simply invincible. Swoosh! In the next moment, amidst the raging rain of light, Lin Sun had arrived in front of a short and thin man. The man was shocked, and he let out a roar. He crossed his hands, and with a swish, a yin-yang cross suddenly appeared in the void. The cross was horizontal and vertical, black and white, and it revealed a strange and terrifying aura of slaughter. As soon as it appeared, the nearby space actually had a cross-shaped rift torn open like paper, and it stretched towards a distance, causing it to be a horrifying sight. Undoubtedly, this was the man's trump card, the 5th one. However, Lin Sun didn't care at all, and he swung his fist down in the air. Bang! The yin-yang cross exploded in an instant. Although Lin Sun's fist force was disintegrated, the Great Way Tower that had been wrapped in the fist force rumbled and smashed down. In an instant, the man's armor, treasures, and defensive strength were all shattered. Starting from his head, the man was directly crushed by the pagoda, and his body exploded inch by inch. From afar, it looked like a paper lantern had been crushed, and it was a tragic death. Another peerless saint had fallen. At this moment, Lai Yu and the other 2 weren't terrified. They were terrified, and they felt like their guts were being torn apart. Chapter 1549. In the distance, there was dead silence in the city of Tao Protectors. Countless people stared with their eyes wide open, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. They had expected Lin Sun to die after being besieged by so many saints. That was why they had clamored for Lin Sun to die a horrible death. But the result was the complete opposite. Many saints had gathered around by Jinxiong, but they felt a chill run down their spines when they saw Lin Sun's unstoppable and bloody methods. Since Lin Sun could kill the 5 sages at will, it meant that he could also deal with them in the same way. It could be seen from this that although this young man had just stepped into the saint realm not long ago, His strength was far above theirs. Go! Liu shouted. He didn't want to fight anymore. Only by fighting Lin Sun would one understand how terrifying this young man's combat strength was. Do you think you can escape? Ruowu, who had been waiting for a long time, rushed out and blocked Liu's path of retreat. Liu's expression changed in an instant. He was in high spirits when he was on the city wall and didn't hide his desire for Ruowu. He wanted to capture her alive and pluck her. But now, there was only rage in his heart. He wanted Ruowu to disappear from his sight. The sixth, Lin Sun's voice sounded again. His fist shook the sky, and the dazzling fist energy exploded in the void like the sun. Its power was terrifying to the extreme. Bang! 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 In front of him, a peerless saint was blasted away. His body shattered inch by inch along the way. In the end, even his head exploded. This scene provoked Liu to the point where he couldn't help but scream, "By Jianxiong, are you just going to watch and do nothing?" His angry roar resounded through the sky. On the city wall thousands of miles away, Bai Jianxiong's expression was uncertain. She clenched her teeth and waved her hand. You've seen it for yourself. This young man is ferocious and extraordinary. Now who wants to fight him? There were more than 10 saints nearby, but they were all looking at each other with flickering eyes. It wasn't that they were afraid, but they knew that no one would be a match for Lin Sun. It was no different from courting death. How embarrassing. Bi Jianxiong was so angry that his hair stood on end. This is my blood demon ancient region's camp. Yet you've been scared by a two-legged sheep? If word of this gets out, where will the reputation of our blood demon ancient region go? Together? Someone suggested. All right. Everyone immediately gritted their teeth and nodded in agreement. Just as Bai Jianxiong had said, they had to win this battle. Otherwise, if Lin Sun was allowed to leave alive, then their blood devil ancient region would definitely become a joke in a 9-region battlefield. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Streaks of divine light flickered in the void, rushing from the city of Dao protectors to the battlefield 1,000 miles away. His speed was shockingly fast. Lin Sun, something is wrong. Ruowu's eyes narrowed as she reminded him. At this moment, there were at least 16 auras that represented the pinnacle of saints rapidly approaching. It was a chilling sight. Hearing this, Lin Sun said casually, "Oh, you retreat far away. I like to see if they can stop me in this battle." His voice was resolute, and it was filled with the boldness of being supreme. Ruowu was stunned. Liu, who was panicking, regained his composure and sneered, "Beauty, you won't be able to escape this time." He gritted his teeth in hatred. Ever since he became a pinnacle saint, he had never been in such a sorry state. Now, he needed a vent. However, at this moment, Lin Sun's cold and emotionless voice resounded. The seventh. Liu's expression changed. He looked up and saw a terrifying light surging out, shaking the universe and covering the figure of a pinnacle saint. In an instant, his soul was destroyed. Meanwhile, Lin Sun had already looked at him from afar. Liu was so shocked that his scalp went numb, and he subconsciously moved far away. Lin Sun did not chase after him. He looked at Ruowu. Trust me. These 3 simple words shook Ruowu's heart. She took a deep breath and said, "I'll hold the line for you." After saying that, her figure flickered and she retreated far away. At this moment, a total of 16 pinnacle saints had already arrived. There were men and women, old and young, and their aura was incomparably terrifying. In the 9 regions battlefield, they were like a group of dominators. They would not easily show up unless it was a critical moment. But now, just to deal with Lin Sun, these pinnacle saints moved together. Including Liu, a total of 17 giants surrounded the front. The world was chilling, and the air seemed to have frozen. The sky changed color, and the wind and clouds surged. In the city of Tao protectors, countless eyes were watching. On top of the city wall, Bai Jianxiong secretly heaved a sigh of relief, but her face was still extremely gloomy. In less than 15 minutes, 7 pinnacle saints were killed one after another. This was simply intolerable. He did not dare to imagine whether Shui Qingyi would go mad with anger when he returned and learned of this news. On the battlefield, Lin Sun's black eyes were cold. Although he stood there alone, his aura was still strong and frightening. "Little bastard, you're destined to die this time." Lai Yu's expression was grim, and his eyes were full of hatred. Who said that saints were not angry? The higher one's cultivation was, the less they could hide their emotions. Because they were strong enough, they were fearless. 7 won't do, 3 won't do, 5 won't do, Lin Sun said indifferently. As for you, you still won't do. Arrogant, someone shouted. Lin Sun looked over and saw an old man with hair as white as snow. He could not help but mock. "You're not convinced? Do you dare to fight me alone?" The old man's face suddenly became gloomy, and he could not say a word. Lin Sun could not help but laugh out loud. "A group of old bastards. Do you know what arrogance is? Or rather, do you have the capital to be arrogant? You're just relying on your numbers." All the saints' faces became gloomy. This was indeed very embarrassing. To deal with a young man, they had no choice but to team up and attack together. Even if they won, it was destined to not be a glorious thing. But this was all they could do. Lin Sun's previous display of strength made them all shudder. How could they dare to go up and fight one by one? It was no different from courting death. "Stop talking nonsense with him. Let's do it," Lai Yu shouted. Hearing this, Lin Sun laughed even louder. His voice shook the sky like a dragon roaring in the 9 heavens. "Today, I'll kill you old dogs here." Boom! He took the lead to attack. However, this time was different from before. He did not hold back and exerted his strength to the extreme. Kill! On the opposite side, the group of saints also attacked. Boom! The world seemed to explode. A battle of this scale could be called an unprecedented battle in the entire 9 regions battlefield. In the city of Tao Protectors, countless experts felt a stabbing pain in their eyes. Their divine souls were throbbing, and they were almost suffocated by the terrifying aura. Some people trembled and broke out in cold sweat. Some people collapsed to the ground, and their ears buzzed. Some people directly abandoned their senses and did not dare to watch the battle at all, lest they suffer the impact and shake their Taoist foundation. On the top of the city wall, Bai Jianxiong watched nervously, and her expression became solemn. At the same time, Ruo Wu, who was watching the battle in the distance, was also tense. There was a trace of unconcealable nervousness on her beautiful face. This battle was destined to be completely different from the previous ones. It was a joint attack of 17 saints, and the power made her tremble and frightened. After all, as a saint, Lin Sun was not really invincible in this realm. The advantage of the opponent's number had played a crucial role. Lin Sun, could he kill his way out? Between heaven and earth, the sound of Tao roared, the light of Tao flowed, and the blazing divine light intertwined with the gorgeous glow of treasures. It was like a raging storm that filled the 9 heavens and 10 earth. This kind of battle was too terrifying. Every saint had mastered the Tao that could destroy the world, and they all had holy treasures that were powerful enough to burn the mountains and boil the seas. They didn't lack combat experience, offensive methods, and they didn't lack bravery or ruthlessness. Now, they were fighting together in this world, and their target was Lin Sun. Such power was enough to make anyone feel desperate. At this moment, the pressure on Lin Sun doubled. No matter how he moved, he was bound to be bombarded continuously. Not to mention killing the enemy, he was even a little stretched to protect himself. It didn't take long for him to fall into a passive position. This made all the saints, including Lai Yu, feel refreshed. The power of numbers finally manifested at this moment. Perhaps Lin Sun was not afraid of being besieged by 7 people, but when facing the siege of 17 saints, he seemed to be in a difficult situation. There was no need to discuss it all. Lai Yu's attack became more and more fierce, and they did not intend to give Lin Sun any chance to breathe. They had already seen Lin Sun's strength. If they let him leave alive, they did not dare to imagine whether they would have the chance to kill him in the future. This time we must kill him. At this moment, Lai Yu and the others were all determined.